2020, and the time is 6 o'clock. If we could have the flag shown and council unmute yourself so we can all say the Pledge of Allegiance together. There we go. All right. Pledge allegiance
to the
flag
of
the United States of America
and
and
to
to the republic
for
for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty and
liberty
justice for all.
for all.
Thank you. Would the clerk please take roll call?
Yes, good evening. Councilmember Anderson,
Present.
Councilmember Cuesta,
Present.
Councilmember Russell, Mayor Pro Tem Sierra,
Present.
Councilmember Stone,
Present.
Councilmember Wink,
Present.
Mayor Olson.
Present.
All 7 present.
Thank you. Our first item under study session tonight is our Director of Public Works, Maria Dandre, and Capital Projects and Engineering Manager, Tim Hose, are here to present along with Dave Bennetts from Mile High Flood District's Government Relations Manager to discuss the Mile High Flood District's Floodplain Acquisition Fund and opportunities for using the funding in the city of Englewood. Thank you for being here. Look forward to this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. City Council, this is a program, actually Mile High Flood District approached city staff to talk about this. And so we think there's definitely some merit to this program, especially given our recent flooding in various areas of the city and just the number of properties that are impacted by flooding within, not only within designated floodplains, but also in our flood prone areas. So as the mayor mentioned, Dave Bennetts, who's the government relations manager from Mile High Flood District, is here tonight. He's going to walk briefly through a presentation on the program, and then we'd like to discuss, if there's interest, how we move forward from a policy level to communicate and solicit input from residents on this. So with that, I'll turn it over to Dave.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me and see me?
Yes, and welcome.
Good. Good evening, and thanks for allowing me some time to talk about our Floodplain Preservation Fund. Let's see. It offers local governments like yourself an option to help floodplain acquisitions in an effort to reduce damages and to preserve land for future drainageway improvements. Could I get the next slide, please? For those of you that don't know much about the Flood Control District, we were created in 1969 as a response to the 1965 flood on the South Platte River, one of the most devastating in Colorado's history, certainly the most expensive at over $3 billion in damages. It even beats 2013. Back in 1969, we were called the Urban Drainage and Flood Control District. On our 50th anniversary last year, we rebranded and became the Mile High Flood District. Although our name has changed, our guiding mission really is not, and that's protecting people and property. We do that through a number of programs to assist local governments in planning, designing, constructing, and maintaining flood control facilities, and through our education and outreach programs. Next slide, please. Here you just see some facts about the district. We cover a 7-county metro area, 33 cities and towns, the city of Englewood being one of them. Our work is primarily focused on major drainageways, rivers, and creeks. 2021, our budget will be $77 million. We have 45 employees. And we serve over half of Colorado's population, which is kind of astounding that half of Colorado's population is in the metro area. The total state population, I think, is 5.8. So I mentioned the programs we have. Let's talk about the Floodplain Preservation Program. Next slide, please. I thought I might start with the definition. What is floodplain preservation? Simply, it's purchasing and removing floodplain land from possible future development, or to purchase and clear land of existing structures if it proves cost beneficial. So doing so removes future flood risk or existing flood risk from homes or businesses, and it preserves that land for flood storage and conveyance. The importance of flood storage was recognized in 1980 when the Colorado legislature funded our maintenance program, and they included language identifying floodplain preservation as an important tool for us to have. Next slide, please. Key elements of what we do is really to prevent unsafe development from occurring in floodplains. Before we had this policy, we had people building, just grading over drainage ways and building on top of them. It's also used to preserve future right-of-way for future projects, keep that from being developed. Sites for regional detention, for example. We're working on a site in Adams County right now, a 10-acre site. The person wants to sell the land, but we've identified it as a good site for regional detention. So we're going to use this funds to preserve that site for future projects and keep it from being developed on. And then finally, it's also used to prevent unsafe development from downstream of detention facilities. We've seen developers trying to build homes in the spillways of dams in the past. So this policy really prevents that from occurring. Next slide, please. On the funding side, our board initially identified up to $500,000 may be needed on an annual basis for preservation. Last year, our board reevaluated the program and recognized that $500,000 had not kept up with inflation. We've seen home prices increase fourfold, land prices fourfold in the same time frame. So 500,000 was not enough. Next slide, please. So last year, the board updated our policy and set aside a restricted fund balance of 3% of the district's annual revenue. The nice thing about that is as our revenue grows, the fund will increase. So it will always be increasing as time goes on. So in 2020, we went from the previous year of $500,000 to $2 million. We also added a requirement that ensures there is balanced access to the funds on a county by county basis. We can't have one county kind of hugging all the funds. So for example, if the city of Inglewood used this funds, that would count towards Arapahoe County, sorry. So, moving forward, the district now has a sustainable source of funds that will grow annually. How do we use that to work with our partners? Next slide, please. This kind of outlines the steps that we can help with. We can help you identify properties for acquisition. Generally, we do that by looking at floodplain maps, either FEMA floodplain maps or floodplain maps the district has been involved in. That's kind of the first step. We can also help you determine the property's market value, perform environmental assessments where applicable. One of the goals of the Floodplain Preservation Fund is that we will clean up properties. So if, for example, we buy a home with a house on it, we'll completely scrape it, remove it of all contaminants, and leave it as a bare piece of dirt. And we can also help with the negotiation, the conditions of the sale. Now, typically and really historically, we utilize the local government's expertise and staff to lead the steps that I've just outlined. You guys have people on board that are very good at doing this, probably better than we are, but we can take that role if needed and then transfer the property to the local government once it's been acquired. My lights just went out because I've been sitting here. For example, in Jefferson County, we saw a piece of property. Jefferson County wanted help acquiring it. It was just cleaner for us just to go ahead and do that. So we went ahead and went through these steps, bought the property, and then transferred it to Jefferson County once we were done. Next slide, please. I thought I would give you just kind of a snapshot of what our year looked like this year in our $2 million budget. We did acquire one property this year. That was Weir Gulch. That's the one in Jefferson County that I mentioned. We are working to complete one additional acquisition this year, and that's that detention property that I talked about as well. All of that being said, we're only using less than half of the available funds we had this year. A couple of factors have made it a challenge for us. This is the first year of a revised program. You know, we have new goals and additional funding. COVID has certainly made it a challenge for many local governments, but really are primarily focused on just getting through the year, many with reduced funds and a reduced staff. I know we did have some acquisitions planned for this year in Arapahoe County. Due to reduced funds and staff, they just couldn't do that. So we've moved that to 2021. So really, as I look at the program moving forward, I do anticipate using all of the funds next year. I have already identified about 15 different properties. The need also far exceeds the $2 million I will have available. I do anticipate that at some point in the future, when I can demonstrate a better region-wide need, going back to our board of directors and asking for additional funds be set aside for this program, maybe 4% or 5% of our annual revenue. The need is certainly out there. And I think as this program really gets up and running, we're really going to see how great the need is. Next slide, please. So really, you know, what are the program goals moving forward? Number one, better outreach to the local governments. This will be through direct contacts to the local governments, floodplain managers, city and county managers, and elected officials, much like we're doing here tonight. You know, developing better tools to identify candidate properties. Our goal is to develop a district-wide GIS layer of floodplain properties and maps as a tool. And we can use those to work with our local government partners to identify and then prioritize eligible acquisitions. You know, for example, in the city of Arvada, I'm working at one area that's got 15 different homes in the floodplain. How do you pick which one of those 15 you buy? So we need to develop some kind of priority system, and we'll be working on doing that next year. And then we're also looking at open space. Here, the thought is to work with parks departments, open space boards, and other agencies to look for candidate properties that can really serve multiple uses, one of them being an open floodplain. For example, the city of Louisville, there's a 10-acre parcel that used to be a big farm. It's for sale. Developer would like to build it, you know, really tighten up the drainage way. The city would like to buy that and preserve it. And so, you know, if 30 or 40% of the land is in the floodplain, we can help them at 30 or 40% of that purchase price and really try to preserve that larger piece that will serve multiple needs, one being parks and the other being an open floodplain. Next slide, please. Maybe go back one. Yeah, here. I just want to highlight briefly a couple of resources the district has available. We have our full policy document available, which offers the great detail on everything the policy says. We also have this 3-page fact sheet that I sent to all local governments in February. I think that's how you guys became aware of this, and it outlines the key points of our updated policy. And then finally, we have ourselves, the district staff, and myself as a resource to assist you guys moving forward to identify properties and then figure out how to use the funds. I know, for example, Tim is working with somebody on our staff, John Valines, and they're working with Dewberry to map the floodplains in the city of Englewood. So once that work is done, then we can sit down and figure out how we might be able to use these floodplain preservation funds to help you guys acquire some properties. So that is a very brief and high-level overview of the program. I think what I'd like to do now is turn it over to Tim for some additional information. And then we can come back and have some questions and discussions on this. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Tim.
All right, so these next slides here, they show the properties in the city of Englewood that are within the 100-year floodplain that could be eligible for this funding. This first slide here with these blue parcels are these are the ones that have been adopted by FEMA. So these are the ones that are required to have the FEMA flood insurance. So I think I think we have a little over 100 of these parcels like this. And this next slide here, this is all the stuff further south in the city there. That's I guess the North Basin, the South Basin, but there's over 1,800 properties here that are identified within a 100-year floodplain. These are not FEMA adopted, but these are all ones that were identified in that caliber study. So these could all be eligible as well. So we definitely have quite a few properties in the city that could be eligible for this funding here. And that's we want to get some feedback this evening on if council is interested in pursuing some of this funding, and then how we go about prioritizing which properties should receive this funding or should be considered for purchase with this funding. So this next slide here is the Dry Gulch area, kind of in the northeast part of town. That's another 200 parcels. But so this is kind of the program that's available, and we just want to get some feedback on what if council would like us to put together a kind of a policy for how to prioritize properties in the city to possibly use this funding.
All right.
That's the end of our show there. So
Thank you. And the council's ready to start asking some questions. We'll start with Councilmember Cheryl Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. My first question is, so for the properties within the FEMA identified 100-year floodplain example we have before us, what proportion of homeowners whose properties are identified within that group as candidate properties, how many of them may decline the acquisition service? And if you know that answer, do you have any data on why the reasons why properties identified as such might decline the acquisition of the property through the city in your experience?
So we haven't reached out to any properties yet to gauge their interest in this. We're trying
I don't
to.
mean in the city. I'm sorry. I'm not talking about Englewood because we're obviously not there yet, right?
Okay.
So I'm pretty much talking maybe about the gentleman that presented first, his experience doing this in other cities. So in the similar properties to those captured, maybe that's what confused you, Mr. Hose, within that 100-year floodplain group. So similar examples elsewhere where we have data. That's kind of what I was wondering.
Okay.
I mean,
Dave, do you have
basically,
information on that?
Yes, I mean, if there are properties that are, I think the first point is to get properties mapped into a FEMA recognized floodplain. With that comes the requirement of flood insurance if the person is financing the home. And so the problem or the challenge may be a lot of these people that are in those mapped floodplains that you haven't fully identified yet may not even know they're there. So number one, you want to communicate the risk to them, and then they can choose at that point buy flood insurance or to allow the home to be purchased. You know, it's in theory, if you have flood insurance, it will make you mostly whole if your house is damaged during a flood. It's not necessarily going to save lives. It's basically going to protect the property. And so we've seen, you know, it's been a challenge for us. Most of these programs are voluntary. In my experience working with other local governments, the only time we've actually gone to some kind of condemnation or forced acquisition is a critical piece of infrastructure needed for a very large project. If you have a regional detention pond, which maybe could save 150 homes downstream, and you've got to buy 3 or 4 homes in the meantime, maybe that's a decision you make. But really, most local governments are doing this on a voluntary basis. I'm working in the city and county of Denver right now on a core study where we've identified several hundred homes that didn't know they were in the floodplain. And so in those instances, we've offered them a voluntary program where we can come in and purchase your homes if you'd like. And if not, then just make sure you have flood insurance, or primarily be aware of the flood risks that you do have.
Member Wink, was that good for you? Okay, great. Anybody else? Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the presentation. I guess my question is, I suppose for Mr. Hose, do we, I'm looking at this list of 1,800 homes in the 100 or in the 100-year flood area from Caliber. Does that study have the level of kind of reliability in terms of how at risk these homes are that the FEMA floodplain would? I kind of got the impression that this was more of a high level study and it's kind of a best guess. Are they really is it the same quality of study that would go into a FEMA floodplain?
So you are correct. The Caliber study was more of a high-level study. These are the ones that were identified. The current study we're going through with the flood district is the major drainage way plan study that we're doing, and that will update the hydrology and do a much more refined evaluation of the actual properties that are identified in the 100-year floodplain. So that's the study that Dave was mentioning there that we'll need to wait for these properties to identify which ones for sure are within a 100-year map, 100-year floodplain that would potentially qualify for this funding. So we do need to wait for that study to get that information.
But that study will apply to the South Inglewood Basin and the other basins that Caliber studied?
That is correct. Yeah, it'll apply to the whole city, and it will definitely do these basins here on the drawing as well. These red parcels will also be included.
Okay, and then the follow-up to that is, I know a number of these homes were not only within a 100-year flood risk, but also 25 and 10, and even some of them I think were in a 5-year flood risk. Will that study also identify which ones are at more, stratify those risks, so we'll know which ones are at the most risk?
Yeah, there will be a part of that study that shows the ones that are actually in more of the concentrated area of flow of the water there. So we'll know which properties are more susceptible, I guess, to the flood waters than others. So it'll help us to identify which properties probably are more of a risk of being flooded every time it rains. So that will be something identified in the study as well.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of kind of feedback on this, it makes a lot of sense to make this available to those homes that are really, really at high risk, but just to open it up to, to 1,800 or I guess if you include the FEMA plains, a couple thousand homes. I don't think that actually really does much good for us. And then just give somebody an option to sell to, to sell to another buyer or something like that. I think what we would really want is to make this either the two ideas that come to mind are the homes that are really at the highest risk, or the ones where if we remove the home and could install some sort of infrastructure would reduce the risk for a number of other homes. So that's just kind of my thinking on it at this point. That's all I have for now. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks. Can I just follow up with what is the timeline for that study?
The hydrology work is just getting ready to start here within the next couple of weeks, and we're hoping to have some data possibly by mid next year. We're hoping to have a little more information on that, and we'll be able to have a more defined idea of which properties are more impacted by flooding than others.
Great. And Member Stone, you're next, but Director DeAndre, did you want to say something to that first? Okay, go ahead, and then it's Member Stone's.
Thank you. And just a response to Councilmember Anderson. Yeah, when we were going through the Caliber study and some of the discussion after that, we had identified some properties through that study where there was, 4 and 5 feet of inundation in certain less than 100-year storms. So I think, to your point, trying to identify those on a more discrete basis of where even if we do the improvements, they might still have significant flooding around their property, even if we do some of the planned storm improvements that we're doing. So that might be one way to start to reduce down from 2,000 to a smaller number of homes.
Thank you. Member Stone, you're next, and then Member Russell.
And Director DeAndre, you actually answered like the first two of my questions with that. The last question would be just again following up with Member Anderson. Have you started to identify or do we have an idea for how to identify what properties might be used for flood mitigation that we could, acquire from citizens that are, the homes are in that extreme kind of risk zone that we could use as, flood storage, I guess is the idea, right?
Yeah, it might be difficult. We'd have to amass enough parcels to make a big enough pond, if you will, to do something to that extent. But we can certainly make that a criteria as we move forward, because it might be in conjunction with another project, or even some minor storage might make a big difference in certain areas, sub areas of the basins.
Awesome. Thank you.
Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm having a little bit of trouble. I've been kicked off. The system has kicked me out about 3 times. So I may have missed something. One of my questions is, have the Big Dry Creek and Little Dry Creek been designated as a FEMA flood area?
Yes, those 2 basins are FEMA floodplains within the city. Those have been adopted by FEMA.
And then what about, did we ever declare the North Basin of FEMA? It's just a flood district, but it's not been declared FEMA. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yeah, well, I'll let Director DeAndre answer definitively, but in terms of where you are and I am, yes, this has not been, it's just been registered in the state is what I understand, right?
Yeah, and I'll let Tim answer that. He can really speak to that more succinctly.
Yeah, so the Harvard Gulch, Dry Gulch, that northeast part of the city has been adopted by the state. So it allows us to regulate construction and development within that floodplain, but they are not required to purchase flood insurance in that area. So that's kind of a mid-range adoption in that area.
Okay, so I guess the one thing that I think that we need to make sure that we do, like especially over in this north area, the Harvard Gulch area, even if we acquired property, if Denver doesn't fix their problem, we can't do anything really, because it would create a problem for Denver also, right? They have to work backwards. Do you understand what I'm asking?
That is correct. Yeah, they've got to get their part fixed in order to make it all one cohesive basin there. So that does cross the 2 city boundaries. So there is some inter-city cooperation required to totally make improvements on that one.
And then I guess what I would like to do is identify the most critical areas. And then I guess what my biggest concern is, I do believe people would go into the buyout, but we have very limited funds. So we need to identify the area that we want to target first, and being the most critical area. I think that is, instead of opening this up for just whoever volunteers, I think that might not be advantageous for us. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Yep, thanks. Mayor Pro Tem Sierra.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Bennett, you stated that you have a $2 million budget, correct?
Yes.
And you stated in 2020, this is going to be a year where you don't use the entire budget. So some of those properties are now going to be moved over to 2021, which you stated, I believe, will meet the entire budget for 2021, correct?
Correct.
So I guess my question is, so if we were to prioritize some area or some properties within the city of Englewood, what then is the process for approval from the Mile High Flood District? So if we identify 3 properties, are we guaranteed that all 3 properties are going to get approved, or is there another approval process that the Mile High Flood District goes through?
there's no other really approval process. It's just setting priorities. And so as this program develops, as I said, it's a new program, we're just starting, but let's just say you have your 10 priority properties and we work on a county by county basis. So the city of Littleton has their 10 priority properties, and you know, everybody else in Arapahoe County will have their 10 priority properties. Then we have to look at which is the highest priority of all of the ones that everybody submitted. And so it might be that, you know, regional detention gets us more bang for the buck. And so I think it's, we're working to develop that a little bit better next year. Right now, we're just trying to get this program up and running. And next year, we have money set aside to build the tools that will help us set priorities. You know, one of the key things we're going to need is good information from each local government. So you guys are already doing the best thing you could be doing, and that's participating in the study to help give us the information. So, you know, most other local governments already have all of their floodplains mapped. Some do, some don't. But as I said, the $2 million is not going to cover the need by a long shot. You know, a lot of local governments are kicking in 50% of the acquisition. Although we can fund up to 100%, I think we're going to try to cover more property if people will be able to cover more property if folks can come to the table with a little bit of money. So for example, on the Irondale Gulch one I'm participating in, they're paying half of the property or that acquisition, and that's a $1 million property. So they're putting in $500,000 to purchase that property. You know, the problem is property values are just skyrocketing now. Bare land right now is going from $6 to $10 a square foot. This property we're looking at in Irondale Gulch is, you know, $6.50 a square foot for a bare piece of dirt. It's just crazy, and it makes it very difficult. But as I said, I do believe that I will be able to go back to our board and seek additional funds once I can demonstrate the need of this. And really, spending money to keep homes from being built in the floodplain and the purpose is some of the best use that we could possibly do with our funding. We don't need to build flood control facilities. We don't need to build detention ponds. If we can just preserve the natural floodplains, that's really the best bang and really the cheapest bang for the buck that we can have. So I really anticipate in the next year or two going back to the board and getting additional funds. And I've already talked to them about anticipating that. So it's, you know, the problem is the need is tremendous. I mean, you guys are talking 1,800 properties. I can guarantee you most other local governments have a list just as long, because the metro area has a history of just blading over the drainage ways and building homes. I mean, Denver, we just spent, you know, almost $1 billion. All of that Platte to Park Hill, we had to scrape out roads and build a drainage channel. One of the biggest drainage ways in Denver was completely filled in and built over. And the floodwater still wants to go where it goes. We need to provide a place for it to go. And you guys are kind of suffering the same thing. Your infrastructure is undersized to handle what you need. So the first thing we need to do is get the study going and then try to figure out the best we can to move forward.
I appreciate that, Mr. Bennett. And Mayor, just a comment, whoever's handling the slides, the next slide after this Calibre 100-year parcel slide, I don't have that in my deck. So if you could just post it or just so I can take a look at it, I may generate more questions off of that. But thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Mr. Bennett, for your answer.
Director DeAndre, go ahead, and then I'll move on to Member Stone.
Yeah, thank you. I think to Mr. Bennett's point, and just circling back on Councilmember Wink's question, you know, about why do people maybe not want to take advantage of this program? And I think it goes back a lot to just the housing prices and the land prices in general. So they might want to be purchased, but then they have to in turn purchase another home, and the costs are just significant. So whether it's for reasons of wanting to stay in their home because that's where they've lived for so long or whatever. There's probably a variety of reasons why people choose not to participate in the program. But similarly, across the board, it's difficult to find another comparable property probably within the metro area. And that's why we would go in with an appraisal process, make sure that it's a fair market value, but sometimes that is reduced because there has been flooding in the past.
Thank you so much, Director DeAndre. I was curious to understand or be able to forecast, just after all of these processes, how many residents in that 100 home area might end up choosing or staying in their homes in that very heavily flood prone area. Because even in just the 2018 example, we saw very, very upfront just what the impact of the insurance coverage was on homeowners. Just having that insurance, yes, it didn't really make very many people whole. And as a council member, I just remember feeling very concerned about these residents who already had insurance coverage. Of course, those who didn't were another story. And so I'm trying to weigh the options and consider who might stay, who, what level of risk and concern and emergency may we still have on our hands if X, Y, Z. That's why I was asking. So thank you very much for addressing that question. Thank you, City Manager.
Next is Member Stone.
So, Mr. Bennetts, it sounded to me like you said that retention ponds may not be effective means of reducing flooding in the area.
They certainly can be, and really we don't know. That's the importance of getting the study done. They'll look at detention as an option. It's always one of the most cost-effective options. We just don't know. Usually regional detention or big detention ponds work much better on undeveloped land. I mean, I don't know, it depends on the hydrology, it depends on the flow, but maybe you need to buy 15 homes to get the detention pond big enough to reduce the flood risk for folks downstream. You need to kind of do the math and see if that's a good investment or not. But regional detention is always the better way to go rather than trying to channelize. And on undeveloped land, we always size, build detention ponds, and our requirements are that you cannot reduce or release water at anything greater than the historic rate. So if this little creek always had 5 CFS, they have to put a detention pond in big enough so that when it rains, only 5 CFS goes downstream. And so it's much tougher in developed areas like this to get detention ponds in, but not impossible. So that's one of the things you'll need to look at as part of the study. And
awesome.
We're participating in the study with you, so we'll be there with you.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
And Member Russell, and then we'll move to giving some direction here.
Thank you, Mayor. I think that one thing that we need to be cognizant of is especially those properties in the South Englewood Basin that are on Acoma and Bannock, on the east side of Bannock, especially because of the loss of life, and those basements did fill up all the way to the ceiling. And so, and I don't know that there's enough room there to put a detention pond, but it really is a life safety issue at that point. So I think we should keep that in mind. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, so I think what you all need tonight is whether or not we'd like to see you move forward on this. Is that correct? And I mean, the study is occurring, but you want, if I read this right, to determine if staff should further evaluate these options, and if so, the parameters under which properties might be acquired. So,
yeah, and I think that's the direction you guys have given us. So I think refining that list of maybe who the most at-risk properties are, the ones that would be subject to the most inundation that we couldn't protect through other means, such as our planned stormwater projects. And then also properties maybe where we could amass some degree and possibly work them into other projects so that we could provide some of that detention if possible. I think that was the summary I took away, Mayor.
Yeah, I think everybody's in agreement with that. I didn't hear anybody saying, don't do this. Right? I think we all have concerns. There's way too much to be done and not enough money to go around to do it. But this is great. I'm really thankful that we have this connection with Mile High, and thanks for the work that you're doing to help us.
Thank you.
All right. Is there another hand up, or I see someone's hand up, but maybe it's not. All right. Great. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you.
The next item is agenda item 4B. It's our Senior Recreation Supervisor, Brad Anderson, Asset Manager, Caroline Miller, Director of Parks and Recreation, Library and Golf, Christina Underhill, Director of Information Technology, Margaret Brocklander, Director of Public Works, Maria DeAndre, and Asset Manager, Megan Blees, Director of South Platte River Renew, Van Rye, Deputy Director of Utilities, Steve Simon, all here in one place to present an overview of the citywide asset management efforts. And Council, if you remember, this was one of the things that came out in our retreat together of really wanting to get a good idea of what we have here. So thank you for putting this together for us tonight.
Yeah, I'll kick it off, Mayor, if I could. As you can see, we've assembled a team here to respond to you and kind of bring the council up to speed on what we're doing from an asset management standpoint. As you mentioned, this was discussed at the retreat in terms of the police building. So the police building was relatively new, probably 6 or 7 months in, and there was a real desire, and the discussion was around how do we maintain this great piece of property that we've now developed. And so we've expanded our discussion tonight, and you're going to hear from several different departments about what we're doing in terms of asset management across the board. So not only our buildings, but also how are we attacking this for our other major infrastructure items, our sanitary sewer, stormwater, water lines, our buildings, as well as our parks and IT infrastructure. So you'll hear from a variety of folks tonight, and really just give you that overview as we move into our strategic plan implementation in 2021. So I'll turn it now over to Peter Van Rye to give a few more opening comments and talk about our agenda tonight.
Thank you, Maria. And to add on to what Maria was just talking about, really this is the long-term approach to managing our assets. So if you think of South Platte Renew and utilities as an example, in terms of assets that between those two organizations, it's in excess of $1 billion. And so to proactively manage those systems, those pumps, those water rights, those filters, things like that, what we're really good at as engineers and planners is we're really good at building things and then moving on to the next thing. And sometimes what happens is we think that well, we just built that. So if you think about I hear a lot about the expansion at South Platte Renew, and that was just so recent. But that expansion at South Platte Renew was actually in 2006 to 2008. So that's 12 to 14 years ago. And so, whereas year over year, we think, okay, well, it's still new. It's still new. Well, now we're almost 10 to 15 years on a number of these assets. At the time that expansion occurred, we wanted to make sure asset management was a component of how we managed these new improvements. And so we collect a tremendous amount of data. And this is something you'll hear Caroline talk about a little bit more. What we want to then do is take that data and turn it into something actionable so that we're actually proactively managing all of these assets across the city. And so it's really about the financial investment and then ultimately having people look at assets differently as it relates to a long-term investment as opposed to a single point occurrence when you build it, install it, and then move on. So as you can see on the slide, we've put together a task force to help coordinate this across the city. There's a number of different priorities and based on the department, but we're trying to coordinate that to make sure that there's a comprehensive cultural approach from a citywide perspective to looking at assets across the city in a way that's really proactive and long-term as opposed to immediate and short-term. With all that said, I'm going to turn it over to Caroline Miller, who's the asset manager for South Platte Renew, and she's going to lead the remainder of staff through the discussion.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Peter and Maria, for that excellent introduction. I appreciate it. And good evening, everyone. As Peter said, my name is Caroline Miller, and I'm the new asset manager at South Platte Renew. To take a step back, I just wanted to go over a little bit of the fundamentals of asset management before we dive into the nitty-gritty details. So we developed this nice kind of positive feedback loop, if you will. So asset management, by implementing asset management, it allows for a very sustainable way of thinking, with the primary focus really being on the long-term life cycle of our assets rather than that near-term day-to-day sort of work aspect. So many of these components, as you can see on this graphic, feed into a positive feedback loop, and each City of Englewood employee contributes to each of these components, whether it's from the capital planning and the budgeting of projects, all the way to the operation and maintenance, the renewal and replacement of assets, all the way to decommissioning. And if we actually implement a successful asset management program, not only within each of our departments, but within the entire City of Englewood, we will definitely improve our decision-making throughout the life cycle of not only our existing, but our future assets, resulting in a lower cost of ownership overall. Throughout this presentation, you'll hear from each of our departments, and we'll focus on three things. The first will be our strategic plan development. The second will be our asset management systems and software. And the third will be training and resource needs. So with that being said, I want to switch gears and now turn it over to the utilities department, where Steve will kick us off on our discussion.
Thank you, Caroline. I'm Steve Simon. I'm the Deputy Director for Engineering for Englewood Utilities. As Caroline mentioned, we'll be covering three focus areas of asset management. So let's start with strategic planning in the utilities department. So our current state is of renewal planning is reactionary, and meaning that for the most part, we are fixing things when they break. A more appropriate, or that is appropriate for certain assets, but a lot of critical assets necessitate a more proactive approach. We are collecting some data when we perform work. However, it's not really stored or used in a formal process. And we're also not collecting all the useful data that we can be collecting with some of the newer tools that are out there. We have established in our 2021 budget funding to support some annual renewal. We're going to start with an annual funding for water and wastewater pipe renewal and rehab. Our future state, we're soon going to be moving forward with some external support to help us develop a gap assessment. And what that's going to do, identify where we're at currently and a prioritized approach to where we want to get to from an asset management standpoint. One of the important components of that is certainly going to be development of a data approach and strategy, and looking at what data we collect and more importantly, how we use it. This will be timely because we're preparing to kick off on a rehabilitation of 4 pump stations. And what we want to plan and design into those facilities as part of that process is data collection components that are going to support our future asset management needs. Another thing that we'll develop as part of our strategic plan is levels of service. And these are really important to establish customer expectations of the service we provide. And then these in turn can drive funding and staff resources under a data-driven and measurable approach. So it's important that we apply a means of measurement when we establish levels of service. Next slide, please. As far as our current asset management systems, we have been using Infor EAM as our work management system since 2008. That's the system by which we can create work orders and assign resources when we complete them. We are an active GIS user. GIS is mapping software that is really valuable to staff to locate assets and to access information about it. As far as our asset inventory in both of these systems, they're incomplete and we're only partially using the functionality of those systems. So utilities will be a very active participant in this collaborative process we're looking at to identify potentially alternative asset management systems moving forward. In a future state, where we will be heading is we want to make sure our asset inventory is accurate. So we need to collect and upload data to get to a complete and accurate inventory. And as important, we need to set up protocols to make sure it stays up to date and accurate as we switch out assets or we undertake or complete new projects. And then a bit more down the road is deploying some more of the sophisticated tools for data access and usage through mobile devices that staff can use out in the field and dashboards that users can use to track performance and other operational data. Next slide, please. And then finally, on the resource development, our current state is we lack the internal resources to fully support an asset management program, and we lack a training and professional development program. So where we're headed with that is we are about to embark on a recruitment for a new engineer that's going to support our asset management program. I hope to have that individual on board early next year. I personally have a background in asset management, so I'm going to lead the strategic planning and then evolve and develop that engineer into an asset manager type role over the next couple of years. We'll set up an annual training budget and allocate time for professional development to help grow our staff. There's a lot of innovation in this field, so it's really important that we all stay current. And I'll hand it over to Caroline for South Platte Renew.
Awesome, thank you, Steve. And again, I apologize, my video wasn't working, so hopefully everyone can see me now. So like Steve said, we're going to talk about the strategic development at South Platte Renew. And fortunately, we have actually been implementing components of asset management for quite some time, probably since 2008. But the unfortunate part is, even though we've been collecting components and implementing components, there's never been an intention behind that data collection. So it's never been really used for planning purposes. And also, it has never been used to actually assist in our decision making or improve the life cycle of all of our assets that we have at the South Platte Renew site. As a result, in 2019, we hired a consultant, WSP, to perform a gap assessment on the asset management program, as well as provide a recommended path forward to assist in this process. And also at this time, the asset management team here at the plant, we're in the process of drafting an implementation plan that will set the framework for the program moving forward. That will also then shift into our strategic plan, which will be audited on a quarterly basis, and we'll be sure to gather stakeholder comments and lessons learned and integrate those in the strategic plan update as we move forward into the future. We also contracted again with WSP and at this time, and they're providing us guidance and implementation support during these initial steps in this process. Another component, like Steve said, in the asset management program is the software or the system. And similar to the utilities, South Platte has had a system, N4EAM, in place since 2008. N4EAM has allowed us to collect large amounts of data on our current assets, but without a real solid intention behind that data collection. Its real purpose has been for work management, meaning we're tracking our assets based on labor and costs, and it's more day-to-day rather than using that information for long-term projection and predicting for budget or preventative and predictive maintenance. And as a result, our maintenance and work on our assets is solely reactive and emergency-based, meaning we can't get ahead of maintaining our assets and provide planning and budgeting purposes. And because of that, we want to move forward and have our system be used for data-driven decisions. And we want to utilize software such as a Power BI platform or record drawing software platform to support the asset management softwares in the future. We'll also be sure to perform an in-depth review of not only our current softwares, but alternative softwares. So we are enhancing the asset management programs and workflows and procedures that are currently in place. While we do these reviews of our current alternative softwares, we want to ensure that all City of Englewood departments, the utilities, public works, parks and rec, IT are all coordinating and collaborating to ensure that we're setting up the city for success with a solid asset management system. Training and resource needs within South Platte Renew. So as I've mentioned, we have been implementing components of asset management for quite some time, but a formal asset management team was never developed. And because of that, the current culture at South Platte is very operational centric, resulting in more reactive maintenance and an inability to predict long-term needs. And as you all see, South Platte Renew advertised and hired an asset manager in July of this year, myself, to begin the development of the asset management program. Since then, not only roles and responsibilities, not only within the asset management team, but within our organization are being developed and refined. And we're seeing that shift from that operational centric culture to an asset centric culture. So we're getting out of that day-to-day aspect and more to a long-term predictive aspect. So people are understanding that when they touch an asset, that it doesn't just have an impact at that moment, but it has an impact down the road. And by taking these steps and these trainings, South Platte's going to be successful in decision-making. So with that being said, we'll be able to have near and long-term budget development projections, program and project development between all of our divisions, as well as a very high level predictive and preventative maintenance program. So I want to shift over now to the Public Works Department, where Megan will speak about where their current and future state is.
Thank you, Caroline. This is Megan Blease. I am the asset manager for the Public Works Department. Public Works Department is in a different space in this asset management project than South Platte or even utilities. And within Public Works, we have different divisions, such as traffics and streets, fleets and facility. And with that brings different type of assets as well. We have traffic signals, we've got our facility buildings and sidewalks. So different divisions are managing right now currently in different ways. Some might be using spreadsheets, some might have some work management systems for making work orders or tasks such as street sweeping or cleaning the sewer storm inlets. Asset management is needed to bring us together as a department to improve our communication and record keeping. The asset inventory is also kept in many different systems. Might be in CAD, it might be in Excel, it might be in GIS. So we do need one system of record where we can keep everything organized and try to complete everything that we do need to manage. Next slide, please. So enterprise asset management system is needed to get our documentation and reporting back to the level that we need. We are building a GIS database platform for the data collection. Work management system is going to be implemented so that we can maintain the records for the work that is being done and the maintenance that is being done to all of our assets, our streets, our traffic signals, our stop signs, fleet management as well, so we can see the work that's being done, whether it's clearing snow or sweeping streets. With additional records completed, we can make better and more informed decisions. And with collecting more, we're going to be needing tools that we can use at our desktops and on our mobile devices. So both in the office and out in the field, we're able to collect and share and report and analyze all of this information that we will be able to take in. And from that point, this brings our system of record to being a system of engagement through this ability to report and analyze and share. With that, I'll hand it over to IT. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I'm Margaret Brocklander, and I'll be presenting on information technology asset management as well as GIS asset management. So for asset management, IT currently uses a software called Manage Engine Service Desk for both the help desk as well as managing our assets. Currently, our software provides the ability to discover hardware, software, and network equipment across network scans. So our collection of assets is a little different than the rest of the departments. And we use network scans to ensure that we have an accurate inventory and to ensure the city is although our service desk is our current system and it's very beneficial with both help desk and asset management integrated, the system has many features that we're still working to implement. When the software is fully implemented, it will advance the IT processes by integrating the financial, the inventory, the contractual, and it'll support the life cycle of management to further strategic decision-making within the IT environment. Next slide, please. The city also uses Esri's GIS software for asset management. Currently, GIS provides a data framework that can be used to process, input, and display asset data spatially. And much of the data is available to the public on the Open Data GIS portal available on the city's website. The portal offers many spatial and tabular data assets, such as applications to view street sweeping schedules, a pothole dashboard, or zoning and parcel information. And for the future state, you heard many of the presenters refer to GIS as one of the tools used to track assets. However, GIS is not a robust asset management system. It does have important features. However, it does not include equipment maintenance scheduling or job costing or asset lifecycle management or project management. GIS will complement an asset management system by offering the ability to visualize models of a physical structure and related activities in a map view. And now I'll hand it over to Brad with Park, Rec, Library, and Golf.
Thank you, Margaret. Well, first of all, we'll start off with the strategic plan development that we have for the Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf Department. In the current state right now, what we're seeing is there's various systems being used throughout the different divisions that we have in our department. The other thing that was recognized pretty quickly was we don't have a plan in place. And then also, unlike some of the other departments there, we do not have an asset management person. For the future, what we're looking to do is we will assign an asset manager person. That will probably come within the existing staff from one of the divisions that we have. We also want to redefine the roles and the support that the asset manager is going to need. Also, we're going to implement an asset management system. Also, we're going to look at utilizing one system if that is even feasible. The nice thing about the other departments coming together and this task force collaborating together, hopefully we can get one system and all of the different departments can use that one. Next slide, please. As far as the asset management system goes with our department is, like you've heard on the other departments, are GIS. GIS is currently being used for our Parks Department. They are tracking benches, some playground equipment, those types of things. Parks Department is also using the Planet Geo system. That system is out there and they actually track each one of the trees that are located in all of our parks and all the green spaces in the city of Englewood. The Aquatics Division is using DigAquatics. What DigAquatics is used for is that is used for some of the assets we have, especially for the slides that we are demanded by the state of Colorado that we have a daily inspection on each one of those slides. And then also what I found out was there's a number of our divisions are simply just using an Excel spreadsheet to track or to actually list the different assets they have in their division. We're also, like some of the other departments out there, is we're in a reactive state with a lot of our assets, which when they break, we put all our resources to it and we try to get it fixed. So there's a better way out there, and an asset management system can still help us take those assets and actually perform a little bit better with those. Number one, what we're going to look for is the assign an asset management person. We'll probably have someone that's going to be each one of the divisions right now. We're in the very infant stage with that going on. Define the roles of the support for the asset manager. Mentioned that one before, but that's definitely, we're going to sit down and collaborate, and with some of the other departments, what kind of roles does an asset manager really have, and how can that help out our department? And then also we're going to onboard that asset manager within each one of the divisions and try to get to, and with the new program, we should be able to get to a proactive preventive maintenance to where now we know that each one of those pieces of equipment, here's the preventive maintenance to it. Now we can track it and hopefully save some money on the budget. So with that, let's go to the next slide, please. Training and staff development. Training and staff development is very important in all the different departments that we have. In the current state, what we're doing is basically the supervisors are maintaining the current system, and if they need training, they're just going to go out and they're trying to find what type of training they need for that specific system. Also, we're researching that feasibility once again. We're researching the feasibility. Does the Parks, Recreation, Library, and Golf Department, do they even need an asset management system? We're going back. We started this about a year ago, and then we found out the rest of the departments were going for an asset management. So we've kind of pigtailed and came part of this task force that's going on. In the future state, where do we see ourselves going as a department? Number one, we're going to generate that asset management team. We're looking forward to that one. And the nice thing also is other departments have got some asset managers. We can pull the knowledge that they have and help us out as a department. Optimize data decisions. What type of data are we going to put into the system? What type of data can we put in the system? And how is that truly going to help us have an advantage over not having the system too? And then also train that asset management team on utilizing the system. How can we best utilize the system to its fullest so that we can better preserve all of our assets? And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Caroline. I'm sorry, Caroline. And she's going to wrap everything up for us.
Awesome. Thanks, Brad. A quick wrap up. I'm sure you're all wondering, how do we get from that current and future state of asset management within the city? The task force has outlined 5 high-level initiatives that are needed in order to develop an asset management framework and kind of allow for that data-driven decision-making in the future. And as you've heard, we're all at different stages of this process. And while the process can take up to 10 years, we want to ensure everyone on this call that we will continue to coordinate and collaborate within the asset management teams to set up the city with a successful asset management program. With that being said, we'll move to questions and discussion.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for presenting. This is really an important, comprehensive presentation of all this asset stuff that we've wanted, and it's great to see. Member Wink is going to kick us off.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I am so grateful to be having this discussion because, as you stated, Mr. Steve Simon, this helps us build the necessary foundation for not just the pieces you shared tonight, and you went very in depth in your presentation, all of you, but for a lot of other critical future work, such as cybersecurity. Our water system solution has water system solutions nationwide have had various challenges that have brought us to this 21st century era of smart water solutions, right? Solutions that, because they're smart, they inherently present cybersecurity risks. And so we need to have a fail-safe series of methodologies in place to ensure that our water system is continually functional while we manage all of the security risks. And one of the foundational components to doing that, to mitigating that cybersecurity risk in water system solutions, is that asset discovery. It's identifying all of the assets. I mean, and the process is thick and wide, and I applaud you for going through it for the layman so well and clearly tonight, because it's really thick. And because I work in data, I know about, it's part of data governance. And so identifying your industrial assets help you to know how to build the necessary security strategy. I mean, that's one small slice that's going to sit on top of what you're talking about here tonight. This is so necessary for us. And yeah, I'm glad that all of you spoke to the data-driven decision-making that we need to make. And absolutely, we cannot be reactive. in matters like this, well, in anything really, but in these critical matters. And so we need to get in front of these solutions and use the data available to us to work smarter, not harder, and predict and prevent problems before they arise or manage them quickly after they do occur. So this real-time ability to manage risk based on simply identifying assets. It's the results and the impact is so huge. So I hope my fellow council members listened carefully and really engaged in what you were saying, because this is absolutely necessary. So thank you all for your presentation tonight. I'm extremely excited to hear this information. Thank you, Mayor.
Your next is Member Stone.
Thank you so much. And not to sound like just an echo of Member Wink, but I think this is really great. I'm currently going through the exact same process with my own institution that I work for. So I know how much work it can be to identify all of this and then come up with a plan to, address all of it and to try and, not just catch up on what we're behind on, but then try to get to a point where we're, looking ahead and moving forward. So I'm really, really impressed just with the outline that you guys have laid out here. Clearly, we got a really good person to lead the way on this. So I'm really happy to have you, Ms. Miller. Yeah, this is great. I don't know, I guess really just need to know how we as council can be supportive of what you guys are doing to make sure that you have what you need to get it done.
I guess that's a question for you all. If anybody has something they want to bring up.
I can maybe take a shot at that. So I think the you can see that there's a number of different paths that we're all on that are heading towards a coordinated path into the future. And like Councilmember Stone said, it's trying to not only deal with all this past information, but then translate it into something towards the future. So I think really the first and foremost thing that I think is really something that I've experienced here differently than some of the other organizations that I've worked at is an understanding of the importance of this from the council level. So between what Councilmember Wink said and what Councilmember Stone said, I think that understanding and support is one of the most core important things to allow these programs to succeed. And so from that point, I think the next step is really understanding, one, that this is a long game type of approach. This doesn't happen in a month or a year or 2 years. And this becomes a cultural approach that really takes time to get people thinking, it's just as important to turn the wrench on the nut to get the nut to tighten down as it is to go back to the computer and enter the information about the activity of tightening the nut, so that someday down the road, when we look at that pump, we say to ourselves, oh, we've tightened that nut 30 times and it's cost us $10,000 and the pump's only worth $2,000. So I think it's really getting people to understand that it's not just the activity, but it's the documentation of the activity. And that's really the long game aspect of this. And so I think that ongoing support from council is really where we get to succeed in terms of that type of planning.
I appreciate that, Director Van Ryn. And just, I'm currently on a 1-year path to getting all of our cell phones and laptops updated to the present decade. So I can't imagine the undertaking that you guys are currently under. Yeah, I'm very impressed, really happy that you all are the ones that are running it, because we clearly have the right team. So thank you.
Member Cuesta, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to staff for the presentation. It's certainly very complicated what you guys are doing with as many items across as many departments as you have. And when it comes to asset management, one of the first thoughts that comes to mind for me is what assets should be managed. And for me, it's always the low end that comes into question. I'm sure you guys aren't tracking every pen or pencil. So how do you determine where you'll start? What qualifies for being managed on that low end of value?
Sure. I can jump in there if you don't mind, and everyone can interject after me. But at South Platte Renew specifically, we manage our assets and, like you're saying, on a criticality level. So we take our process and we rank it based off of a criticality of 1 to 3 at this time. That will be modified once we implement asset management. And then from there, we focus on criticalities that are higher, so a 2 and a 3. And that's when we really focus our proactive maintenance, our preventative and our predictive maintenance. The ones, those are an open discussion that we usually will just run to failure based on redundancy. So like you're saying, we don't track every nut and bolt, but we have a dollar value and track that based off dollar value, also the redundancy and the criticality that would have in terms of a failure, a consequence of failure, or a likelihood of failure. So what would the impact be at our plant if this piece of equipment went down? So that's sort of how we track our assets at this time. If it's a nut and bolts, that's just kind of a something we don't really worry about, and it's just an expendable at that point.
Sure, thank you. And Director Brocklander, you mentioned something that jumped out at me. In your tracking of laptops then, it sounds as though you don't physically touch them. There's more of a digital connection you make with them to ensure that we still have, call it possession of them, be it out with a staff member though?
That is correct. We don't physically touch them to manage the assets. We have network scans that run over the network on a regular basis, scanning for any type of equipment that attaches to our network. And that feeds into our current service desk system and updates on a regular basis. So we can see any hardware that's been added or any software that's been added.
Very interesting. Okay, terrific. Thank you. And again, thanks to staff for the presentation.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you everybody for the presentation tonight. This has been very informative. I know we've been talking about a lot of software over the last couple meetings. So I'm just trying to understand the timeline here. Now that we're looking at the asset management system, is that something that we expect to see as part of the budget for 2022, I guess I should say?
So I can start that conversation off and everyone can interject. So just to reiterate, we're all at different processes of this implementation of asset management. And while the South Platte and the utilities and some of the other departments have a system in place, it's not probably the best system. So what we're going to plan on doing is starting now and into the first quarter of next year, really take that as our initiative, develop the needs that are required within the software, whether it's our current Infor software or an alternative, and sort of drafting, whether it's an RFP to go out for bid for a software that might be beneficial for all of our departments as a whole, or if we need to break it out and to get 2 softwares. But to answer your question simply, yes, it would be a budgeted for 2022 essentially, but we would have it scheduled and ready to go in 2021 so we can execute it in 2022. And that would be our vision. If anyone else on the asset management team task force wants to interject, feel free to do so.
Yeah, I'll just mention for Public Works, we had identified the need to acquire an asset management system of some sort and had put that, I believe it was even in the 2019 budget, but it's in a capital fund. So that rolls over from year to year. So we don't anticipate needing to come back in a future operating budget for that request. So we still have that money on hold or available to use.
All right, the next is Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, team, for all the presentations. I love it that we're collaborating on this across all the departments. I'm sure there's a lot that you're each learning from the other departments, so that's great. I did want to ask specifically about the Allen Water Treatment Plan. I apologize if I missed anything in the presentation, but what is the status on their asset management, and is that being incorporated in one of the systems, or is it going to have a system of its own, or does utilities have a system overall?
I'll take that one, Member Anderson. The Allen Water Treatment Plan does use Infor as its work management system. So again, that's the system that allows us to plan and schedule work and then collect information in terms of resources and parts used to complete the work. So that suitability to remain as our work management system will be part of this collaborative effort. In terms of looking at a condition assessment and how much longer are our assets going to last, that is in the budget for 2021. The master plan that Hazen completed earlier this year, I would call that a higher level screen. Definitely identified some deficiencies in areas where we need to plan on replacement. So next year we'll take a deeper dive into that. Again, the budget is set forth, and then the ensuing years after that, we'll be addressing what those needs are in terms of projects. Again, those are also in the 5-year projection.
Okay, thank you.
Member Russell, and then we're done with.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, team, for all of this information. I do appreciate the collaboration, and my question is more around the infrastructure. I mean, I know it was touched on about asphalt and things like that, but even storm sewers or roads and bridges that need to be addressed. There is a connection between software and all of that, correct? I mean, so is asset management software something that we can use citywide, or, I mean, as far as the infrastructure goes?
Yeah, maybe I'll take the first part of that question and then hand it over to you, Carolyn. In terms of the specific assets, we are initiating a asphalt or pavement assessment condition rating yet this year. So that's going to kick off probably within the next few weeks and be completed in early 2021. So what that is a specific rating of each street segment and rating it from 0 at the lowest to 100 at the highest, so that we can get a quantitative analysis of the condition of each pavement section. So we're focused on that. We're also completing a traffic signal inventory, as well as looking into doing a sidewalk assessment, an inventory, and road signs. So we're looking at those 4 basic assets first. We have been doing, there's been some fairly limited collection of data in the past by the utilities department for storm sewer. They were really focused on sanitary sewer and water, and to a lesser degree stormwater. So we're planning to do that beginning in 2021, and to the point that that's going to be collected over the next couple of years to collect all of that and have a good inventory of that system. As far as the software, the overall coordination, I'll hand that over to Carolyn to respond.
Yeah, and the question about the software, is there a software that could be used throughout the city as a whole? The answer is yes, but we want to ensure that each of our departments has their needs met. So if it's GIS based, we want to ensure that there's a software that's GIS based. If there's a software that allows for a record drawing platform connection, so if we have large capital projects such as infrastructure improvements here at South Platte Renew or the utilities, and we have actual consultants who have 3D drawings that allow to integrate 3D drawings into our asset management software so we can capture technical detail on the new assets. We want to ensure that that's an option. So the answer is yes, there is softwares out there that allow for us to have one software for the entire city. We just want to ensure that they meet the needs of each of our departments. So that's going to be one of the priorities when we continue to coordinate with each other to draft the needs and see if there is a software that we can have singly sourced at the city.
And I'd like to add
Thank
one
you.
more
And
thing.
then just one other question, and this may, okay.
Go on. I was just going to add one more thing about software, if I could. So when I've been a part of other organizations that have had these software questions, so software is a tool for an asset management program, and when we let the software drive the approach, if the software isn't something that works well for a particular area of the city and people aren't using it, and like I said, back to that cultural piece, then at that point in time, we've implemented the software, but we're not getting the results out of the software. So that's where there's always this balance between what does the software provide and what is the organizational need, and making sure that we optimize that across the departments, which means it could be one software or it could be multiple softwares. The key is getting everybody in the city to be thinking from an asset management perspective. And that's what creates a program that lasts and is successful long-term.
And the human, I mean, there's a human aspect to this too. You have to be able to know exactly which things are more important or to prioritize. Or, I mean, the software probably can do that, but I think there's a need for human interaction. So the one, and I don't know if this has to do with asset management, but what about preventative maintenance? Can the asset management design preventative maintenance in every area of the city?
Caroline, you want to take that?
Sure. I would say the answer is yes. We're currently implementing components of preventative maintenance within the city. So I'd also just like, and I'm sure everyone here knows, but preventative maintenance and predictive maintenance, in my opinion, are very different things. Preventative is having a manufacturer tell you every 3, 6, 9 months you shall do these things. Predictive maintenance is doing something such as vibration analysis that will allow you to get ahead of a failure. So preventative maintenance, the asset management software by all means can track. You put that in, you develop a work order or a PM to say you need to do an oil change every 3 months because it's required. While we're currently implementing components of preventative maintenance or predictive maintenance, we just started our vibration analysis program. So that will allow us to say bearings are about to fail or things are going out of sort. So you should probably do these 4 things in order to mitigate that solution, or it's failed, you need to get ahead of it, install a new asset. So the software can indeed do both. It does preventative maintenance a little bit more seamlessly, but you can integrate predictive maintenance within the software.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No worries. Thank you.
All right. Those are great comments and stuff. I'd like to ask one more question because Peter brought it up of this is a culture shift. Mm-hmm. And it's wonderful. I mean, I think we're all really, really thankful for what you've put together here and the comprehensive nature of it. Another question about what council could do or the city in general in order to support the culture shift and to, I don't want to, maybe not incentivize, although that could be part of it, but acknowledge and celebrate the shift as you make it, because it might be a lot more fun to twist the nut on the bolt than to go back to the computer and put it into some software that you did it. And I can imagine that gets mundane over time. I know for things I have to do in my job, sometimes I'm like, ugh, do I have to put this in one more time? And yet it's so critical for what we're doing. So how can we support that in some way to celebrate and make sure that the transition is positive?
I have an initial thought on that. And so it's part of what these strategic plans will identify. And this is part of the comprehensive shift, even from a leadership perspective, is by making this the cultural approach, it sometimes requires different and additional staff resources to maybe there's a specific person that their job is to ensure that there's work planning done, and then the information that is coming in raw data from the person actually turning the nut is then integrated into the asset management system. So we don't know what the future staffing needs are for this, but as we start to flesh out these strategic plans, we may identify more efficient utilizations of new staff in order to allow the person who loves working on the motor or the pump or the street or whatever to optimize their efforts there, and then find someone who loves doing data entry or loves doing this kind of predictive data analytics type of work to then take that information and do that kind of work there. So I think that's part of the longer term understanding of how resources will be allocated. And I see Maria's off mute, so I think she probably has some more to add.
Go for it.
Just kind of a follow-up or kind of to add to that. I also think it's about being supportive of this cross-departmental effort, because Public Works is that top layer. So we're the icing on the cake, if you will, in the street. But there's all those assets underneath: water, sewer, even our IT, fiber optics infrastructure, the private utilities, Excel, Comcast, all of that have to be coordinated before we can put the layer on the top. And so it's really supporting that idea of it takes a lot of planning. And so rather than shooting from the hip, we really have to look back or go back and plan out these projects so that we're coordinating on all levels to address all of those assets.
Great. Well, along the way, if you see some things we can do to encourage, let us know. Thank you, everybody, for the presentation tonight. All right, Council, would you like to take a break now and then come back? Let's do that. Let's take one now. We'll come back, consider the minutes, and move through. All right, let's take 5 minutes. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for letting me take that break. Next item is our agenda item 5, consideration of minutes of the previous session. Does anyone have any concerns with the agenda minutes, or I mean the city council member minutes of November 2nd? Seeing none, can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes of November 2nd city council meeting.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Please vote.
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Cuesta,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra,
Aye.
Member Stone,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Mayor Olson.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. There is no agenda item 6, and agenda item 7, I don't believe anybody has signed up. Do we have anybody here for unscheduled public comment, agenda 8?
We do not.
I think that's a no. All right, so moving on to agenda item 9. Are there any consent agenda items that anyone would like to pull?
Mayor, I would like to, I could just ask a real quick question on, I believe it's 9B2 about the sewer utility connection fee. And this question would be for Director Ben Rye. Did you say that we were going to, we would be looking into this by March of next year about the outside districts paying more?
Yes, council member. So that actually goes beyond broader than just the fees itself. It goes to the rates as well. And so, yes, we are looking at what that sewer rate structure outside the city looks like. And I've actually been working with Stantec to get a project moving forward on that. I actually just received the proposal on that. And so our plan is we're just moving right ahead, right in line with all the work that we've done this summer to come to a point where I anticipate by the end of Q1 next year, so likely around March sometime, or maybe even before if we can get the analysis done quickly, to report back with some potential approaches as it relates to changing the way we approach those connector districts, and to address specifically your concern from last time, which is the administrative fees, but also the liability associated with the ownership of the asset.
Okay, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, could I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 9A1, 9B1, 9B2, 9B3?
I move to approve consent agenda items 9A1, 9B1, B2, and 9B3.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, it was Member Wink and Member Stone.
Stone.
Yep.
Okay. Member Anderson,
Please
Aye.
vote. Yeah, thank you.
Member Cuesta,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra,
Aye.
Member Stone,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Mayor Olson.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Our next item is a public hearing. It's a public hearing on vacation of right-of-way, 3649 South Grant Street. Due to COVID-19, the public hearing is being held virtually. Anyone interested in speaking at the public hearing, we have a phone number and an email, and that was noticed to be done by November 16th at 5 p.m. for directions. There's also, I believe, a place at the city center right now for people to also be there, but could I have a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
Thanks, Member Anderson. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Stone. All right, please vote.
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Cuesta,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra,
Aye.
Member Stone,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Mayor Olson.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. I'm not sure how many people are being sworn in from staff, but could we present all of them to be sworn in at once?
Yes.
Mr. Burkholder, are you the first one or the kind of the ringleader of the whole thing? So you can identify, make sure everyone else has their videos on.
Right. I believe I'm the only staff member that
Okay.
will present.
All right.
You could just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and position for the record, please.
Wade Burkholder, Planning Manager and Community Development Department.
Thank you.
Thank you. You can begin.
Okay, let me get my share screen working here. Okay, good evening, Mayor Olson, members of City Council. We do have a request this evening before us for a vacation of public right-of-way at 3649 South Grant Street. In September, the Community Development Department received an application from Mr. Kevin Phasing, who is a resident at the said address, requesting vacation of public right-of-way to facilitate additional housing on this R2B zone property. Per the comprehensive plan justification that was provided in his initial application, this right-of-way area is approximately 4,000 square feet. As of this time, we do not have any sort of plans or construction documents on file for any future improvements to the lot. I want to add that that is not a requirement that there be some construction plans. However, I just wanted to let you know that we do not have anything imminent on this piece of property. The lot in question is 7,754 square feet, and currently there is a single family ranch style home on the property. The lot being in the R2B zone does need 50 feet of frontage for duplex development. And this lot, according to the survey, has just over 20 feet of frontage. So in order to get any additional dwellings on the property, one, if the vacation right-of-way would be granted, that may further the effort to get the resident, Mr. Phasing, to 50 feet. Or it may not. So it goes back into the comment I made earlier that there are no construction plans. There are several things about this lot. There are some peculiar aspects to it, the shape of it, that will dictate what in the future can be built on the lot, which at this time is uncertain. The front yard per code would be oriented towards Grant Street, and the side yard of the parcel orients towards Jefferson. The Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as city staff, has forwarded a recommendation of denial of the current request to City Council tonight, and I will go into the details as to why the recommendation is a denial at this point. So before we get started, this is a copy of the survey. The highlighted box in purple is the approximate 4,000 square foot of right-of-way requesting to be vacated by Mr. Phasing. You can orient yourself. East Jefferson Drive is to the north of this property, adjacent to the north. South Grant Street is to the east. And as you can see here, the 20 foot of frontage would be this little strip right here, if you can see my cursor. The one-story ranch style house is located in this location, and on the immediate west side of the property is an alley. So again, the purple shaded box in here is the area of property as part of the vacation or right-of-way request this evening. First, I'll mention that this application did go through the development review team review and comment period. There were 5 departments that reviewed the application. What you have here is the comments from the Utilities Department. And the reason why the Utilities Department is requesting or recommending this denial is that there are potential sewer line utilities in conflict with the area that's being requested for vacation. So this inset map here, if you can see my cursor, is just a blow up of this tiny little area right down here. And I want to bring your attention to this circle with SS in it, meaning sanitary sewer. So there's a sanitary sewer line that, according to the survey that was submitted, runs according to this blue line that veers off to the north and west, crossing over the alley. However, our utilities department has conducted a field locate, and the actual sewer line runs more directly to the north in the area of the red line here. And this red circle right here is the area where the sewer line is crossing through part of the area that's being requested for vacation. So without further easements and further study of where these lines are located throughout the property, the Utilities Department is recommending further study before approval of this request can be made. This picture here, you see the green circle on the left. That is the sanitary sewer manhole, and you can see the green lines run more or less due north, and you can see the lines coming out in a straight fashion, not crossing over the alley in this location as the survey that was submitted indicates. So because of interference with city utilities that may exist, further study needs to be conducted by the applicant before the Utilities Department would consider a favorable recommendation of this request. The other part of this vacation request is that we do consult with the dry utilities, meaning Xcel Energy, CenturyLink, and Comcast. We did hear from Xcel and CenturyLink. Xcel has stated that there is no objection to the vacation of right-of-way so long as utility rights are maintained for existing facilities within the vacation area. I might add too that if the property were to be redeveloped, there are also multiple overhead utility lines that are present on the property, and there would need to be more consult with Xcel just to make sure that there is no interruption of service with any new construction that would occur in the future on this property. The comment from CenturyLink is that there is an aerial copper cable running in the alley and that rights must be maintained in the vacation area. And I mentioned we did not hear from Comcast. We reached out on several occasions, September 28th, and again on November 4th to try to get some sort of comment from them. But at this time, we have been unsuccessful in getting any sort of response about any kind of utilities from Comcast in this vacation area. So the next department is the Public Works Department that has presented a recommendation of denial of this vacation request at this time. And that is due to two capital improvement projects that are up and coming in this area. The first is the US 285 Congestion Mitigation and Alternatives Analysis Study. And this study may recommend alternative right-of-way lines in this area that would accommodate multimodal transportation improvements in this area. Such improvements would include upgrading sidewalks, adding missing sidewalks in this area, adding bike lanes, or providing additional drainage or utility improvements within this area. And the second project is the US 285 Broadway intersection reconstruction, which was proposing to reconstruct all 4 entrance and exit ramps at 285 and Broadway. And the goal would be to accommodate 3, that should be lanes, not lands, of traffic in both directions, which would eliminate bottlenecks. Now, while the actual reconstruction is not anticipated to extend to this area of the request, again, it may create new right-of-way lines, and/or it may create additional opportunity for drainage improvements, utility improvements in this area. And so until these 2 projects are further along, Public Works Department is recommending that this right-of-way request be denied at this time. So moving on to the Planning and Zoning Commission, they voted at their meeting that City Council deny this request as well for the following reasons. The first reason is that there is still viable use of the property per the Unified Development Code without the vacation of right-of-way, meaning that there is still the ability to provide housing on this lot, like the applicant is stating in his justification of his application. And without further construction documents or construction plans, it is just uncertain as to what the real need for this right-of-way would be at this time. The second is the potential interference with existing sewer lines within the area of request, as I highlighted on the map. The third is the congestion mitigation and alternatives analysis study, and this corridor may recommend alternative right-of-way lines in this area to accommodate multimodal transportation improvements. The fourth is that the US 285 Broadway interchange reconstruction project may establish alternative right-of-way lines within this area as the project design is finalized. So upon completion of these 2 projects and upon further utility location study occurring in conjunction with the City Utilities Department, a portion or all of this requested right-of-way vacation may be reevaluated at a future date and may come back to you at that time with a different recommendation. The concern with all parties involved on the city department level is there are a lot of unanswered questions at the moment. And until we analyze some of these things a little further, we are not able to recommend approval at this time of this right-of-way request until some of those additional answers are found. And with that, concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Burkholder. Council, do you have questions? We'll start with Member Wink.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a million questions, I think, but I'll start with one. Mr. Burkholder, so in the letter from Mr. Phasing in our packet, in that first page of that letter, can you locate that without my providing further information?
I do not have that in front of me.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
It's okay. It's all right. I'm just going to read one sentence. I just want to be sure that that's 100% accurate. So Mr. Phasing states that every single property in the entire medical district, except for our property, either currently has a multi-unit structure or a multi-unit structure can be built and still comply with land use regulations.
So there are a lot of variables as to particular lots. So I cannot guarantee that every single lot in that zone district, based on lot size, based on frontage, can have multi-units on that parcel.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you, Mayor. I'll wait my turn.
You might get it very quickly. Anybody else have questions? Member Anderson, I don't see your hand, but go ahead.
Thank you. I was looking for the participants panel. Mr. Burkholder, you said which side did you say would be per code the frontage of the property?
The frontage of the property would face South Grant Street. Per definition in the code, your front yard faces the long side of the block. So Grant Street, that block is much longer than this East Jefferson frontage. So therefore, that's where we determine that.
So clearly right now, the existing house, it looks like it's facing East Jefferson. It was originally built facing East Jefferson, but code defines which way is technically the frontage.
That's correct.
Now, so if, let's say he was going to build something on this, could he go and get a variance from that? I mean, this seems like one where it would make sense to redefine the frontage based on the orientation of the lot. Would that variance be available to him?
It would, yes.
Okay. The next question, well, I can go back, take turns with Member Wink, or if there's others. I have one other question.
Member Wink, you want to go next or let him keep going?
If it's one more, Member Anderson, why not finish up?
Okay, yeah, so I guess the last question was, is there any, there are some overhead lines, it looks, that run kind of parallel with the long way of the right of way. Is that what that is right there? Yeah, with your hand over it, that's an overhead line?
Yes.
But other than the sewer line, which just kind of cuts off that far portion, are there any other underground lines that run the long ways there through the right of way?
There are no city utilities that run along here. I hate to say that there's no other dry utilities since we haven't heard from Comcast, but there are no city utilities in this area other than this sewer line to the west.
Okay, thank you.
Member Wink, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I have to confess, of all the information I've read in the last 3 years, some of it's clear to me, some of it's really challenging. But this one, I'm having trouble getting my head around. So I pulled up the property, like a photo of the actual property on Zillow, and so I'm looking at that, looking at the map, and okay, so let me back up. What is the precedent, Mr. Burkholder, for granting, and maybe this question isn't valid because there's so many exceptions, but I'm wondering if there's precedent for denying or approving this kind of request, but maybe there are too many variables for me to ask such a question validly. What would you respond?
Well, I think the question you really have to ask yourself is whether there's going to be any either private rights that are damaged by this action, meaning by vacating this right away, you will take away access to another parcel or something like that. The other part of that is, would there be any public loss? Meaning, are there public utilities in the area of vacation that need to be relocated?
Right.
Or, more specifically in this case, and I think the precedent for the denial coming to you tonight is that, there may be part of this right of way that needs to be utilized for future drainage improvements or other kinds of improvements that are being triggered by the capital projects just to the west at the Broadway 285 interchange.
Okay.
So you have to weigh those out as best you can.
Thank you, Mr. Burkholder. Those are very helpful, astute points. So the property owner is requesting basically all of from the existing sidewalk I see along the Jefferson side of the property all the way to the street, correct?
Correct, yeah.
And so what would happen to that street light, which is, I'm looking at the corner, pretty much at the corner of Grant and Jefferson.
Right in this location?
Mm-hmm. It's current, yeah.
Go ahead. Well, it looks like it's currently located outside of the area that is being requested for vacation. Again, however, we may need to do some additional study with our utilities department just to make sure.
Okay.
You finished, Member Wink?
No, one more tiny question, and I'm sorry if this sounds ignorant, but so I see these lovely, and I understand about the concrete utility program, which we've worked hard to establish and we've gotten underway. A huge benefit for the city. I'm certainly glad they've passed by my house. So I see these wonderful graded corners here, both at the Grant and the other end of the Jefferson piece of the property. So what happens to handicap access? Let's say wheelchair access. I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So what happens in that instance? Can people still walk up and down? Or if the homeowner would, if we granted this, the homeowner could basically create a space that is not usable by the public. So someone would have to cross two roads to get around. I mean, what happens with foot traffic?
The sidewalks along South Grant as well as East Jefferson would remain in the right-of-way, so it would still be city maintained. So the right-of-ways would not be, or the sidewalks, I apologize, the concrete sidewalks would not be affected by the current request.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Member Russell, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Burkholder, on the other side of East Jefferson Drive, is that Little Dry Creek?
Yes.
And
over here.
is this area in a floodplain, in the floodplain?
I do not have the answer to that. I don't know if Mr. Hose is still on the line. He might be able to know better. So
if it were in the floodplain, would it obligate the city in any way to protect that area? Or, I mean, would that be like if we did something to mitigate flood, would we need that right-of-way area?
Potentially, depending on the project or the size of the project. You know, again, it goes back to, you know, defining the project area for any kind of drainage improvements. You know, we may need to put larger pipe in the ground that might interfere in this area. I do know there in actual Jefferson Drive right away, there are large water transmission lines. So in terms of, you can see at the top here, the W dashed line, those are water transmission. So, you know, you are potentially running the risk of putting additional pipe for drainage or detention in Jefferson that may push these sidewalks back a little further into this area. So depending on the size and scope of what that would be, potentially, yes.
And so just one other question. If you had a plan, a development plan or whatever, that might be helpful to determine what might be problematic.
It would. It would, because we would have a better idea as to potentially what variances might be needed. you know, the usability of the lot. You know, maybe that area in purple, as it stands right now, is a side yard, and that requires a minimum of 5 feet. So they could push a structure much closer to Jefferson Drive than it is right now if it remained a side yard. So in terms of, you know, usability of the lot, in terms of implementing those comprehensive plan goals regarding housing that was mentioned throughout the application, we'd have certainly a better idea as to sort of the future use of the lot and of the property.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Member Stone, you're next.
Thank you. Mr. Burkholder, I am sure that it is somewhere on here and I'm just not seeing it. What are the actual dimensions of that purple box?
It's 20, it ranges from 20, it's about 25 by 150 or 140 long ways by width, roughly in there.
Okay. And do we know why the city retained that property as right of way as opposed to it being part of the parcel originally? Do we have any ideas as to why that would be?
I do not know
Okay.
why that was retained.
And how long do we usually give a private utility like Comcast to respond to a request for information?
Typically, we hear within a month of our request. So this is a little bit unusual as to why we have not heard from Comcast.
And what has been past practice when we don't hear from somebody in determining what it is that we're going to do with a piece of property?
A contingent. I'm sorry.
All right. Yeah, I was going to say not necessarily in a public hearing setting or a vacating of right of way, but just in general, city practice around that.
Typically, there would be a contingency or a condition placed on an approval if that was council's desire.
Gotcha.
So conditioned that there are no dry utilities for Comcast, it would be approved and or placed within an appropriate easement for preservation of that utility.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. And yeah, I guess my question is about the sewer line. Would it be possible to modify this request in some way to still retain a portion of the right of way to make sure we have access to that sewer line? Just trying to think through the possibilities here. If that was the only underground issue with the right of way, could we modify it to retain just a corner of that piece so the sewer line was still within our right of way and still made the rest of it available for potential development? Is that an option?
It would be an option, but I would recommend going the route of just having an access easement so that we can access it.
Okay.
For future need.
Got it. Okay.
That still means you can't. I'm sorry. It still means you can't build anything over that easement or anything. So we'd have continual right to access that one.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, it looks like there would still be a significant amount of property available for development if we had that easement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Member Stone, and then if there aren't more questions, we'll go on to the actual applicant because he'd like to speak to us. But go ahead, Member Stone, unless somebody else has another question of Mr. Burkholder. We can come back later too.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So the side of the existing property that is considered to be the front yard, how big is that on the existing property? Because it's considered to be on South Grant Street, you said, right?
Well, consider that this house was built in the, and I don't have that in front of me either, maybe the 1940s. And I know Mr. Phasing has the date right offhand, but so this would be according to today's Unified Development Code standards, this is a non-conforming lot in terms of what the front yard and side yards are. So this was built prior to the current codes being in place.
Gotcha.
And so, you know, the front yard or the setback off of East Jefferson today is roughly 25 feet, 30 feet maybe. And then the setback from the house to South Grant Street is maybe 30 feet or so.
And then it looks like the strip of what is essentially considered the front yard facing on South Grant, is that also about 25 feet between the property to the south and the right-of-way to the north?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That made me want to ask, how far is the house from the south side to the house that's south of it?
So the corner of Mr. Phasing's house to this house
Yeah.
is sorry, it's very small.
It looks incredibly close.
Maybe it looks like there's 5 feet on both sides of the property line, so 10 feet.
Okay.
Roughly.
Oh, okay. Mayor Pro Tem also has a question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Burkholder, I guess just to summarize, my understanding of this is that due to the upcoming 285 traffic mitigation study, as well as the potential, the 285 and Broadway reconstruction, those two factors are playing a role in the city staff denying this request at this time.
That's exactly right.
But there's also, but it does sound like after that study and the construction has finished, that potentially the city would be open to looking at this application again, correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we feel we will have more answers to make sure that there are no future projects that would require right-of-way in this area, that if we vacate now, we may need to in the future get back. So we're just trying to figure out as many answers to questions as we can before we can comfortably say, yes, we recommend the right-of-way be vacated at this time.
Okay. And then just a last question. I know you stated that it wasn't required, but development plans would be needed. And you just stated, Mr. Burkholder, that an idea of what the property would be used for would be, or at least having additional information would be beneficial from the city's perspective. But you're stating that it's not required, at least for development plans.
That's correct. Yep.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just have one more quick question. So on that east side of the house where the lot is 25 feet, so is this an additional 25 feet in the purple area running along Grant Street? How, or is
yes.
that only, that's 25?
It may be actually just a little bit more than that. It may be more 26, 27 feet, but yes.
So he would, if we vacated the right of way, he would potentially have the 50-foot frontage, correct?
Potentially, it will be very close, but potentially, if he has, if he has about 21 feet already, and he adds, he's going to have to add, another 29 feet. So it's going to be close. But we also can measure your setback line. You can measure the width of the lot at your front setback. So you can go back the required setback and measure your 50 feet in here, which will give him even more room to work with. So it's likely he would have 50 feet at the end of the day, yes.
And he needs 50 feet in order to do anything, right? He can't have 37 or...
To build a duplex, he would need 50 feet. He can redevelop his current property as a single family residential property without, because it's a non-conforming lot, he would still be able to maintain his single family residential use so long as the other setbacks were met per today's code. Again, that gets into the, it would be helpful to know if there's future plans for additional housing, what the layout would actually be, so we could inform him of what potential setbacks may be an issue. Or may need to be looked at for variances and that sort of thing.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question too. I think, well, are accessory dwellings allowed on this property?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, are there any other questions? We can definitely come back to Mr. Burkholder, but I wanted to give Mr. Fossing a chance to speak as well. All right, seeing none, Mr. Fossing, can we swear you in?
Yes.
All right. If you could just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council?
Yes, I do.
Great, thank you. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Kevin Phasing, 3649 South Grant Street, District 2.
Excellent, thank you. You're good to go.
Okay, thanks everybody. Here I am again. Thanks for taking time. I know it's getting late. This has been kind of a long process, so it's pretty complicated, and it's really comes down to more of a legal question and a public works question as opposed to a planning and zoning and community development consideration. But first I want to correct a few things before I kind of get into a brief presentation that Wade said. Number one, the frontage of the house, according to the survey, is actually 36 feet. The frontage by law is measured 25 feet from the front of the property. So it is 36 feet. The additional 27-ish feet from that line would be, whatever, 27 plus 36 is 63. And then the other thing that Wade said that is not correct is he called this a non-conforming lot. That is not correct. This is by law and by definition a conforming lot. So there are no non-conforming lot regulations that apply to this. It meets the setback requirements. And in fact, it's the only structure that can be built on this property, this 830 square foot house, as the law currently is. So having said that, and I'll address some other questions. Let me share my screen. And hopefully I can make this brief. Again, it's pretty complicated, so I will try to make it as brief as possible. But here is the property, and what I'm asking the city to vacate is basically my front yard that I maintain. This land has never, ever been in public use. It's currently not in public use, and it cannot be in public use, as I will show. A loss of this, a vacation of this right-of-way would cost the city nothing. The city would lose absolutely nothing by vacating this right-of-way because the city cannot legally use it as it is. So These are the definitions and criteria that were given to council by the city attorney in an email a couple weeks ago. And it's very important in this legal process that we follow these criteria, because Wade didn't actually present these to you guys. And it's very important in these legal matters that we stick to these criteria, because anything outside, if anything is presented at this meeting that doesn't apply to these criteria, it doesn't really hold any merit. So the purpose of this meeting is for City Council to apply the facts learned at this hearing to the following standards. And these are the standards that you will use to act. Number one, that due and legal notice of the public hearing was given. That has been done. B, no private rights will be injured or endangered by the vacation, and the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience thereby, including the need to repurchase the vacated property in the future. C, no written objection to said vacation has been filed with the city of any adjoining property owner or any proper party. There are no adjoining property owners to this right-of-way vacation. So if those three criteria are met, in justice to the applicant, the request of the applicant ought to be granted. So it's important that we stick to the facts. So I'm going to present the facts instead of some assumptions and some theoretical possibilities. And I'll let City Council determine how to act based on those facts. So first, it's very important that this legal matter that we present this evidence that the notice of public hearing was given. Okay, done. Next, here is the property right here in the pink star, and it faces East Jefferson Drive. And Member Stone asked, why does this right-of-way exist? And I mentioned many months ago, this right-of-way exists because in 1950, the city wanted to build a 100-foot wide parkway along Little Dry Creek that traveled from Clarkson to City Park. That road was never built, as you can see, but this is the only remnant of this road that still exists today. And for reference, a 100-foot right-of-way is what US 285 is, which has 6 lanes of traffic. So clearly the city has never needed this in all of 70 years that it was dedicated. And I will testify under oath that there are fewer than 20 cars that utilize this road every day, by my estimate. I asked the city to count, but they were unable to meet that request. Okay, so here is kind of a close-up look. Here's the street, here's East Jefferson. And one of the questions is whether or not the city needs this land. Well, it does not need this street. It does not need this right-of-way. The road in front of my house is 42.9 feet wide. That is one of the widest residential roads in the entire city of Englewood for 20 cars to use per day. And for reference, here's one car. You could fit about 6 or 7 of these along that 42 feet. Now, how do I know it doesn't need the full 42.91 feet? Because just right here, it's only 23 feet. I can assure you that there's no bottlenecks in this roadway when it tapers from 42 feet to 23 feet. So if we're talking about how much space the city actually needs, if it were, determined to keep this street, it only needs 23 feet. Now, next thing I want to bring your attention to is this property line right here. Now, the number that I got for this proposal is 24.22 feet. In 1956, the city of Englewood vacated 24.22 feet to this property. The original property line was the same as mine, but in 1956, the city determined it doesn't need that full right-of-way, so it vacated 24.22 feet in 1956. Now, in 2020, I am asking for the same amount of space. The city cannot use this, has never used it, and will not need it. So it's very clear based on the measurements that I have done and that my professional land survey has produced as well. The next problem with this area, and the city knows about this, Wade knows about this, the city attorney's office knows about this, is there is no right-of-way dedication or record of acquisition in this highlighted yellow area. This parcel of land was in a different subdivision when this road was built. The city never acquired a right-of-way to build a road on this parcel. That is my testimony. The proof is in the application. I encourage you guys to read that, as well as read the letter that's the testimony from my attorney that addresses this as well. So what does that mean legally? Well, the city can use the land that it maintains. All this land, it has an easement over that land. It doesn't own it legally, but it cannot use this land that I maintain because there is no record of ownership. So since I maintain this land, the city cannot actually use that until they acquire that right of way legally, which they have not done so yet. So that would be something that would need to be addressed by Arapahoe County courts potentially if this application were denied. Here's another picture. This is all I want is the 24.22 feet that was dedicated or that was vacated to my neighbor right there. This is 43 feet paved. The city does not even use this. There's no cars on this. Nobody needs it. If for some reason the city did want to use something to build a bike lane, there's plenty of space. You can just take that 20 feet that I had mentioned earlier. The 24.22 feet is all my front yard that I maintain. And there are no utilities in this area. This post is outside of the area. The sewer may or may not be under there. It's debatable. So city staff position, just to summarize, these are the 4 positions that Wade had presented. And there's additional ones that are in written testimony that I address as well. But I'd like to go through them one by one. Number 1, he said that the viable use of the property per the UDC remains without vacation of the right of way. Well, according to our criteria that we use, viable use is not one of those. So that's invalid. We cannot use viable use as a criteria to determine whether or not to vacate a right of way. Number 2, he said potential interference with existing sewer lines within the area of request. I would defer this to the sworn testimony by my surveyor, John Doty, who performed the survey that Wade has been showing you guys. And that document is a legal document. You cannot just draw over a legal document and say that this is where we think where we think the utilities are. Even if the survey is incorrect by a few inches and their utilities, the sewer line on the west side of the property, the utilities will not be moved. Structures cannot be built there anyways, and an easement would clearly be included in an ordinance. And if the city attorney's office needs help finding language to utilize, to put in the ordinance for mine, they could just take the language from the 1956 ordinance that vacated the right of way to my neighbor, reserving the rights of way or easements for the continued use of existing sewer, gas, water, or similar pipelines, and appurtenances for the ditches or canals, and appurtenances for electric, telephone, and similar lines, and appurtenances. Probably don't need to say appurtenances 3 times, but you get the idea. An easement would obviously be included in the ordinance. And the city would lose no access to that sewer anyways. The manhole cover is actually to the south of me, actually on my neighbor's property. And the other manhole cover is directly next to US 285. Okay, the next point, the congestion mitigation and alternatives analysis study in this corridor may recommend alternative right-of-way lines in this area to accommodate multimodal transportation improvements. Again, this is an assumption. No evidence has been presented at this hearing that this study includes the area in question. In fact, City Council just passed this on first reading tonight. Council Bill number 54. The language is this is a study of US Highway 285. This is not a study of US 285 and the surrounding neighborhoods. It is not a study of US 285 and give or take 200 meters on either side of the highway. It is a study of US 285. This is US 285. This is where the study will be performed. No evidence whatsoever presented at this hearing, no factual information has been presented that this study will include this property. In fact, based on the facts that I found, it will not include that area. It will be only US 285. And lastly, the US 285 Broadway Interchange Reconstruction Project may establish alternative right-of-way lines within this area as a project design is finalized. CDOT has stated, and it's in my application, that there will be no work east of South Sherman Street. The Director of Public Works stated in a council memo a few weeks ago that they don't have any need. They could potentially use this land for staging construction materials, but I certainly will not allow a contractor to put road base and rebar on my front steps. And then lastly, the Atkins International Incorporated contractor has stated that they will not acquire any right-of-way in this neighborhood. So don't take my word for it. You can just look at their proposal. This is Atkins International. This is what they proposed, and City Council approved this about 4 weeks ago. They said they will not be using East Jefferson Drive or this neighborhood to build any multimodal transportation because we already have a bike path right there, Little Dry Creek Path. Why would we increase and waste, valuable city resources putting something here when we already have it here? And then they say they will avoid right-of-way for all potentially historic properties along all the southern streets. So it's important that we don't make assumptions here and we actually present the facts, which I think I've done. So does this proposal meet these criteria that due and legal notice of the public hearing was given? Yes, that is a fact. B, that no private rights will be injured or endangered by the vacation. That is correct. We meet that criteria, and the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience thereby. Well, the public can't suffer loss because they've never used it, and the city doesn't even have a legal dedication for it, including the need to repurchase such vacated property in the future. Now that is a little bit subjective, but I would say they would not need to repurchase such vacated property in the future because they have more than enough space than they already need anyways. So no written objection to said vacation has been filed, check. Then in justice to the applicant, the request of the applicant ought to be granted. And it's important that we focus on this. I like this word justice. It's one of my favorite ethical principles. The city just, staff recommended to vacate half a city block that was currently in public use at Swedish Hospital right down the street. So in justice to this applicant, I think that the request ought to be granted. So this is all included. I want to just highlight this. This is a letter from my attorney, Ms. Hoppy of Beck, Payne, Frank, and Piper. She's submitting this correspondence on behalf of me. There are several reasons the city of Englewood should grant the vacation. First, it's no longer needed. In fact, the right-of-way is currently used, as it has been used, has very minimal public use. As I've testified, a portion of the right-of-way is a concrete sidewalk in front of Mr. Phasing's home, and there has been no suggestion by Mr. Phasing that this would change with the vacation. I will testify that the sidewalk will not change in any way. It's too far away. In fact, the vacation request is not for any portion of public use. Most of the right-of-way is the front yard lawn of Mr. Phasing's home. Mr. Phasing and his wife currently maintain the right-of-way, as has every homeowner in the past 70 years. Any opposition by the city to this vacation on the grounds that the city may still expand Jefferson Drive are not persuasive. It is of particular note that the city of Englewood has previously vacated a portion of this right-of-way in 1956, and a garage has been built on this land since then. In other words, the right-of-way as it currently exists has a vacation right in the middle of it, rendering the right-of-way completely useless, as I've stated. Additionally, city staff has acknowledged that any anticipated CDOT developments would not impact Jefferson Drive with a particular right-of-way. Another significant aspect in this matter is the portion of the city's right-of-way is excluded, never dedicated to the city for use as a right-of-way, as evidenced in my supporting documents and identified in the Higgins Broadway Edition, Block 3, Plot 4. Put differently, the city is currently maintaining a right-of-way over a section of Mr. Phasing's property never dedicated to or otherwise acquired by the city. This in and of itself creates additional hurdles for the city should the city seek to finally, after more than 70 years, make use of the right-of-way. So I maintain it. I should get it. It's very simple. It's a very simple decision for the city, I think. But we'll see what you guys think. If I can stop my share, there it goes. Okay, so a couple other questions. Councilmember Anderson said, would a variance be available? I think Councilperson Russell said that as well. No, it would not. By law, the variance is not allowed to grant additional housing. Let's see, Member Wink asked about the sidewalk. Member Russell asked about the floodplain. The floodplain is actually in the Little Dry Creek. It does not extend into the street. We mentioned that no development plan is required. It's not a criteria. And then Member Anderson asked about access to the sewer. Like I said, there would be an easement there and no access would be impaired by the right-of-way vacation. So to me, it's pretty simple. If you are responsible stewards of limited city resources, as I know you are, I think you will agree with me that we need more housing and less cars. So I'm hoping that you guys will agree with me and think of what your constituents would want, and we can work together about this. Thanks.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council of Mr. Phasing? Member Stone.
Thank you for that presentation, Mr. Phasing. You said that you currently maintain the right-of-way already?
Yes.
So it's, watering the stuff that's out there and stuff like that.
Correct. There's some shrubs, some native shrubs and some ornamental grasses. I try to minimize water use because I'm an environmentalist, but yeah, I do.
Sure. And did the city plant those or were they there already? Do you know how those got there?
I planted those because I want bees, I want honeybees to use my property for good use.
Awesome. And then I guess my last question is regarding, do you have ideas for what you want to do with it once, if you were to receive that land?
Yeah, so my dream, and I'm not going to be the one to finance it, but directly across Grant Street is a three unit building, and it's the same size as my lot. But because of the goofy configuration of it, I'm not allowed to build that same exact building. And there's 3 families that live right over there. It's a nice triplex. And city is also considering changes to the UDC and these cottage communities. So there's all sorts of things that the city could better use this property for instead of a right of way for a road. People need houses in this city and they need more affordable houses. We need to increase the supply of housing now.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra.
Mr. Phasing, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Member Stone already asked one of my questions, so I'll just ask the other question that I had for you. But how many people actually mistake the right of way for your front property?
Everybody. It's even when we bought the house, our realtor said, "This is your front yard." So not until we did the survey and all this stuff did we realize all this goofy stuff. But yeah, everybody thinks, even fire department, police, mailman, they have a hard time finding the property because they think that my front yard is right there on East Jefferson. So everybody thinks it's mine. I maintain it. I use it. My front steps are on it. My mailbox is on it. My driveway is on it.
So actually, that was going to be my question. So what's the giveaway that where your property line ends within your property? Because I do see your mailbox. I obviously see your steps. Some of your steps are actually part of the right of way, but anything other than the fence that may give away your property line?
No, that's it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Mr. Phasing.
Member Cuesta.
Thank you, Mayor. And I beg the pardon of the group. I just lost power on my laptop, so I was absent for the past couple minutes. And if I'm asking a question that has been provided, the information is provided already, pardon me again. Thank you, Mr. Burkholder, for the information, and thank you as well, Mr. Fassing. Mr. Burkholder mentioned up to this point we haven't received any sort of construction plans. Can you, and you've given us kind of a preview before, but Mr. Fassing, can you tell me again what your intention would be if this were to be granted?
Yeah, to increase the lot size so that we could build housing here. So if I got the right-of-way vacation, it could be a 2-unit property tomorrow. With a little bit of work with the city, there's more options to build 4 units or even more. The comprehensive plan specifically calls for this property to be multi-use multi-use medium density housing. That's in the comprehensive plan. In its current condition, the only structure that can be on this property is an 800 square foot single family house. And good luck finding somebody to build an 800 square foot house for under $1 million.
And so call it 2 units. Let's say it went that direction, just for hypothetically here. So then you would rent those out to folks?
No, I wouldn't. I would either finance the operation and sell it, or I don't know. But I would also like to point out that that's not one of the criteria for a right-of-way vacation. There's no requirement for plans of what it would do. I have a vision to build more housing for families and increase the supply of housing. I can't afford to live in the city as it is. So this is one of the issues, is that people get stuck in these houses and they get so beaten up and run down because of the housing stock. A lot of these houses were built in 1950, as was mine, that they can't afford to buy a new house in the city of Englewood unless they, paint it gray and put in a nice backsplash or something like that. But I think it would be better to increase the supply of housing, especially at a time when people need housing. I mean, this is a fact that the city is dealing with right now.
Sure, understood. And just for clarification, certainly understood that plans aren't required. Mr. Burkholder mentioned that well, and so that's certainly not a criteria I'm applying, and I would imagine that's the case throughout council. Thank you again, Mr. Fassing. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. I have a question for you, Mr. Fassing. Have you talked to any of your neighbors about what your hopes are for the property?
Yeah, so the neighbors across the street are renting. And so there's a lot of turnover over there. The neighbor directly behind me, the house has been vacant for the past year as a developer is rehabilitating it or something like that. The other neighbor across the alley where the city vacated that right away, that's a commercial business. There's nobody there anymore. It's a State Farm office. So unfortunately, I haven't talked to any of my direct neighbors. I've talked to other people in the neighborhood about the need for more affordable housing. I haven't specifically proposed my idea because it's kind of an awkward conversation to say, hey, I want to get some land from the city so it can, build more housing and I'll move out or something like that. So I haven't, broached that topic with my friends elsewhere in the neighborhood.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Fassing? All right. Thank you for coming. Is there any public here? I don't think I see any in the room. Are there any on the phone or anything?
No, we were not contacted, and we don't show anybody in the waiting room. So we have someone in person and then as well online. I don't show. I did just want to mention that 2 documents were submitted. So those will be entered into the record, and they have been uploaded to the agenda. So those are there as well for this.
Can you, for the public, say what those are?
One is the letter from Mr. Fassing's attorney that he kind of showcased in his presentation. And the other is from a survey company, I believe. Is that right, Mr. Fassing?
Yeah, so my surveyor wanted to clarify some of the issues with the sewer. There's kind of, he has given sworn testimony that there is no sewer underneath my property. City staff disagrees, so he wanted to address that.
Yep, so both of those documents are entered into the record and then up on the agenda portal as well.
All right, thank you. All right, Member Cuesta. So is your question for Mr. Fassing or is it staff? I want to let Mr. Fassing. Okay, great. We're going to move back to staff then. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, it's actually for city attorney, if she is present.
Go ahead, Madam Attorney. Let's make sure. There we are. Look at that.
Thank you. City Attorney Brown, it's always helpful for you to just refresh my memory what criteria we're applying here and how we should be thinking about this as we make a decision. And you've helped me out on past public hearings we've had, but if you can run me through that one more time, I would appreciate it.
I could, and forgive me, my camera is not working this evening, so when I turn my video on, you just see the background.
Sure, I can hear you fine.
So there's a set of standards, and let me pull those up really quickly. They're rather comprehensive, and just a moment. They're rather comprehensive, and
Madam Attorney, are you trying to share a screen? Or?
No, I'm not trying to share the screen. I'm pulling up the answer to Councilmember Cuesta's question.
All right, great, thank you.
So I broke them down into 4. There, I've been fighting my screen this entire time. The first is that due and legal notice of the public hearing was given, and that's pretty straightforward. The clerk verifies whether or not due and legal notice is given. The second is complex. The City Council looks at whether any private rights will be injured or endangered by vacation. Then they also look at whether the public will suffer any kind of loss or inconvenience thereby. And then they look at whether or not there may be a need to repurchase the vacated property in the future. And as you look at those, they're pretty complex questions because of all of the different information that the City Council has to look at, whether that's utility lines or street lines or anything else that might be a public or a private right. Then the third thing is whether or not there's been any objection filed with the city by an owner or adjoining owner. And the last is basically if it is determined that there will be no injury caused by the vacation, that the public will suffer no loss or inconvenience thereby, then in justice to the applicant, the request of the applicant ought to be granted.
Thank you, City Attorney Brown. So I think 3 of those we can run through really quick. The posting was made correctly. It sounds like we've had no other contrary information there. And I guess to staff, we haven't had any objections, correct? That third question the third matter that the attorney raised?
That's correct. We have had none.
Okay, so it's that second one, and I appreciate the components you outlined of that second one there, City Attorney Brown. Okay, very good. I'm all set. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, City Attorney.
Any further questions from council? I have one. Mr. Burkhalter, the comment was made, and I'm wondering if we can, with two comments. One is that there is no right of way there. How can we and that there is nothing there. How can we verify the legality that Mr. Facing was talking about? And then secondly, I'm losing it. Yeah, well, that would be first one. The second one is the reason to deny or to grant, which I think, Member Puesta, you might have been getting at this, but how do we determine whether the public has been harmed or not, or could have something of value here? The comment was made by Mr. Facing that we're never going to need it in the future because we've never needed it in the past. Now that's pretty hard to verify, but it would be helpful to hear a bit more about what you could possibly see us using it for in the future.
And I'm going to refer that to Director DeAndrea or Tim Hoos. But with regard to the second question, and they may touch on this as well, but I think the determination is whether or not with the pending redesign and work within that area, whether or not there's risk for public loss with regard to any future projects that are brought about by the 285 widening or anything like that in this area. So, whether that is something that's of concern that we might need to purchase, the city might need to purchase back right away at some point in this area or not. But I'm going to turn it over to Public Works to answer, more of the specific right of way questions as to what might happen in that area.
Okay. Director DeAndrea or Tim Hoos. Go ahead, Tim.
Do I need to be sworn in or anything? Or?
Yes, you do.
All right. If you could just raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in the matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and position for the record, please.
My name is Tim Hoos. I'm the Capital Projects and Engineering Manager for the Public Works Department.
Thank you, Mr. Hoos. Did you hear the question?
So yeah, as far as potential uses of that right of way, there is the potential for staging for the 285 and Broadway project. They could store materials or equipment or their construction trailer over there. That's definitely a nice city-owned property there that can be used to store things. It's a pretty large project with a lot of large equipment and large materials that can be needed. So that is a potential use of that that's going to be looked at as part of that 285 and Broadway project. The plans for that project have not really started yet. We don't even really have 30% level yet, so we're still a lot of unknowns there, and this could be a potential use. There's also the drainage study to do and see if we may need some drainage improvements in that area. They were right next to the creek there, so that could be a use. And as far as the corridor study, there's a potential for a wider sidewalk or a bike lane or something. It may not end up being a road in the future. It could turn into more of a pedestrian corridor or something like that, but it's just part of that study. It is something that needs to be looked at to consider if there's a good public use for that property still before we end up, as the statute there said, if we don't want to give away something that we may potentially want to buy again to use it for a public use. It's next to the creek. It's right next to a major east-west corridor through the city, and there's a lot of potential uses that could be handled on that property, I guess. So there are some, there's a lot of unknowns. We're just really in the preliminary stages. We can't really determine yes or no yet. And that's why we're really hesitant to recommend, giving this right away up right now until we have more of those answers that we can be more confident on if this does fit in any future plans for the area.
And then my question about the right-of-way. There was a claim that it wasn't, that all the things that have been said were not necessarily true. Excuse me.
So that is something, I believe the property is shown as city-owned on the Arapahoe County plat map. So that is something we'd have to research with the county to figure out if that's true or not, if that is how that came to be. But normally we go off the plat map from Arapahoe County, and if it's shown as city property on that map, that's normally what we go by. We could certainly talk to the county more about how they made their determination about ownership of that. But as far as we know, the county recognizes that as public right of way at this point.
Thank you. Next is Member Stone.
Thank you. I got to be honest, if in the course of the 285, study, that piece of property were used to store construction trailers or materials, I would be staunchly against any kind of activity of that nature.
Member Stone, this is a public hearing.
I'm about to ask a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm responding to what was said by staff, and then I'm going to ask a question. So just want to make that really clear that I would not see that as an option for that property. And my question is, why would we use the 25 feet that is furthest from the highway as opposed to the 42.9 feet of road or the further intervening space between the road and Highway 285, which I don't even have a number on. Does anybody know how much space there is between Jefferson and 285 that we're also saying would be completely consumed potentially by an expansion that would cause us to then go into Jefferson and further into that right of way? Because if that's the reasoning for why we're rejecting this, then I need to understand, how we got to that assumption.
So the property between Jefferson and 285, that's actually Little Dry Creek through there. That's the creek corridor. That is a floodplain there, so there wouldn't be any roadway or anything in that area. So as far as which side of the road we'd use for staging, it would depend on how we could fit. Probably want to keep it open to traffic as well, but there is an opportunity there to use at least part of that shoulder, the half of the road, to store things and to have some room to spread out a little bit when they build the 285 Broadway project there. That is going to be a lot of disturbance and a lot of moving things around, and they're going to need places to store materials and equipment, and that could be an opportunity. I'm not saying that it's going to happen. Like I say, we don't know yet, but it is a potential city-owned property that could be used for to help us build that project and save us some overall cost by having some room to store materials and equipment. And somewhere in that, it probably wouldn't be on the front yard there, but it could be on the north side there, to where we would maybe need that south side to get vehicles around there, or pedestrians or something like that.
So the only suggestion that I've heard so far is that area would be used for storage of materials, not that it would be used to expand that pathway in any way, shape, or form for the 285 project. Is that correct?
Well, it could be used for pedestrian use as well. That's part of the congestion mitigation study, I think, to look at, different ways to get pedestrians and bicycles through the corridor there. And there could be potential use there for something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Director DeAndre, did you want to add any more there? I saw you unmute.
Yeah, do I need to be sworn in first?
You do.
Okay.
Yes, all right. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in this matter now being heard by the Englewood City Council?
I do.
Thanks. Please state your name and position for the record.
Thank you. Maria DeAndre, Director of Public Works. I just wanted to mention, I think there's a variety of uses that could be considered. So tying back to our previous discussion earlier tonight about the fact of acquisition of properties along Little Dry Creek where we have a 100-year floodplain, this could potentially be a location for some regional detention. I think what we're trying to say in general is that we're not sure of the uses yet, and we'd like some more time to work on these two projects, continue to work on our stormwater projects to determine what if is needed. And that might be shifting the road over. I agree with Mr. Fasting that the width of that street is not necessary, but what other potential public infrastructure uses could we make out of that space? And so I think that's why we're asking for some time to evaluate that. Thank you.
Director DeAndre, while you're still speaking about that, what is the timeline for that, the best timeline, do you think?
Yes, so as we talked about earlier, we're looking at that study with Dewberry with the Mile High Flood District is going to be wrapping up kind of towards, Tim, would you say about the mid part of this year? And then we are hoping to have 30% design plans for the US 285 interchange roughly towards the end of this year, or excuse me, of 2021.
Thank you. It's good to get that in public comment and our hearing here. Member Anderson, you're next, and then Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my question was a follow-up on the potential possibilities for storage there. So I just wanted to clarify, you're not talking about actually putting materials on what would kind of appear to be the portion of the right-of-way that's in his what appears to be his front yard, or is kind of has the driveway and sidewalk on it. You're talking about using potentially using the shoulder area of the road. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, that is correct. It would depend on what they needed to store there and then how much room they needed there. But more than likely, we'd try to use the north half rather than try to go up on the yard area or anything like that. But we could potentially need it for temporary pedestrian access around the construction area there or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That was my only question.
Member Russell.
Thank you. And I think my question has already been answered, but just to add a little bit more to it, if it's potential that we would use that area for storage, it is possible that we could close off that street totally without really any impact to any of the citizens in that area. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's more of a secondary street there that runs along the north side of those homes. So that is a potential use that we could just close that whole area off and kind of use that as kind of the staging area, storage yard for the 285 and Broadway project. That could be a potential benefit for that project, to be able to close that road and use that to store the materials and equipment, and use that to help stage that project.
Thank you, Mr. Host. I greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Mayor.
Other questions? All right. So I think I understand that staff is concerned that there may be more use of this public land that we haven't thought about yet. And that, as well as there may actually be things underneath. Some further study needs to be done in that realm as well. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe Director DeAndrea said it very well, that we're asking for more time. We're at the beginning of these projects, and we don't know at this point in time. And as I mentioned in my presentation, sometime in the future, we might find that, the recommendation may be different. But at this point in time, that's where the city departments are standing.
All right, thank you. Member Stone.
Yeah, one more question. If we were to request information of a citizen when we were planning to acquire a piece of their land, and they did not respond to us in a timely fashion, how long would we give them before we acquired that property for city use?
Can Mr. Burkholder?
I'm not sure that I'm going to have the best answer for that. Maybe Mr. Exposed.
I'm sure there's some kind of timely response that's expected from citizens, right?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how hard it is to track down the property owner and that kind of thing. But normally, if we were to acquire a property, we would need to track down the legal owner of the property to make the transition and that kind of thing. So we'd have to go through a process there. And then I'm not sure all the legalities of how to, if you're not able to track down the legal owner of the property, if there's some ambiguity there or whatever. But we would definitely be proactive in trying to track down the owner to close the property acquisition one way or the other to make sure we had the right person who was authorizing the sale of the property.
And so we've contacted Comcast twice with no response.
That's correct.
And they're the only utility that we don't know about.
Correct.
Okay. And when was the original application submitted?
September 17th.
Of 2020.
Correct.
Okay. I'm really bad at math right now. Was that 4 months?
It's about 2 months.
2 months. Jeez. Told you I was bad at math right now. Thank you. Appreciate it.
It's not really math, but that's good.
I mean, I was trying to count back from 11. It wasn't happening in my head. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's good. That's the justification. Do you have anything else? No. Okay. Member Russell's next.
Thank you. And this question is for Mr. Phasing. How long have you owned that property?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. That's what I needed to know. Thank you very much.
I might ask one more question about utilities or dry, what you call them, dry goods, dry whatever. So if Comcast had stuff underneath there and everything else was fine, and we knew what 285 was going to bring, and it seemed like this property wasn't really going to have any implication for that project, would we worry about Comcast at all? Would that hold this back, do you think? Maybe that's not a fair question. I don't know.
Well, it would be Comcast would be responsible to obtain their own easements for the area if they had anything there. If they don't have anything there, then no, we wouldn't be.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Anderson and then Stone. Thank you. Could we vote to close?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Cuesta?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Stone?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. This will be coming back to us on December 7th as first reading. All right. Next item is 11, ordinances, resolutions, in motion. So 11A1, this is a CB 55 vacation of public right of way of Swedish Medical Center. And oh, I got some feedback there. Is everything okay? Or did somebody say something? I hope I didn't miss something. Nope. Okay. Staff recommends City Council approve a bill for an ordinance for a vacation of public right of way to facilitate the Swedish Medical Tower expansion project. And Senior Planner Brick Bell is here to answer any questions. Mr. Bell, do you have any opening comments or are you just ready to take questions?
I do, just a couple. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay.
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Tonight is the first reading for Council Bill 55 for the vacation of public right-of-way associated with the Swedish Medical Center Tower expansion project. In terms of previous council action, City Council held a public hearing on November 2nd of 2020. And during that public hearing, both staff and the applicant presented an overview of the vacation request, and testimony from a citizen was heard. Tonight, staff recommends that Council approve a bill for an ordinance for the vacation of public right-of-way, and that Council schedule a second reading for December 7th, 2020. I'm not going to go through the presentation from the public hearing, but I would be happy to answer any questions. There are also representatives from Swedish attending if you have any questions for them. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Council, any questions? I guess not. Could I have a motion to, I'm going to just give another minute, make sure nobody put their hand up. Oh, Member Anderson, there you go.
Well, I actually don't have any questions regarding this other than I did mention the hypothetical potential for a conflict of interest. So I just wanted to get council's feedback on that. It doesn't feel like a conflict of interest to me. But nevertheless, I wanted to bring it before council as a potential. So I'm happy to hear any feedback on that.
Thank you. I don't see a conflict of interest, and if you don't, I mean, you have a part-time employee in your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, Member Stone.
Member Anderson, does your family member own stock in Swedish?
No.
No, I don't see a problem.
Anybody else have any concerns? Member Wink?
I also see no problem in Member Anderson engaging in a vote on this matter.
Seeing no other objections,
Okay, I'll vote then. I don't see any reason to recuse myself.
Great. Could I have someone make a motion for CB 55?
I move to approve CB 55.
Thank you, Member Stone. Second?
I'll second that motion. Wink.
Thank you, Member Wink. Any further discussion? All right. Would the clerk please take the vote?
Yes. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Cuesta?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Stone?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Next is 11A. It's Council Bill 56. Staff recommends City Council approve a bill for an ordinance to approve an amendment to an intergovernmental agreement between the Colorado Department of Transportation and the City of Englewood that pertains to rehabilitation and widening of the Dartmouth Avenue Bridge over the South Platte. Our Capital Projects and Engineering Manager, Tim Hose is here, and you are on tonight.
Good evening. Yeah, thanks. So this is in addition to the original grant we got for this Dartmouth Bridge here, we've received an additional award to improve the intersections on either side of the bridge there at Dartmouth there and the Platte River. The Platte River Drive runs on the east and west side of that bridge, and this grant will pay for improvements to modify the intersections to match the widened bridge a little better, as well as help us purchase new traffic signals for both sides of the bridge there and really upgrade the entire corridor there to get us all the way to Santa Fe with a widened section there that'll allow 2 lanes each direction with left turn lanes. So it really does kind of complete that project and make it all work together so we have everything we need to have a fully widened road when we're done. So I'll take any questions you have on the IGA amendment.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council? Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. And I have several questions. So we have been accumulating funds for this project since 2015. Have we expended any money on the Dartmouth Bridge project?
Yes, to date we've spent about $450,000 on design of the Dartmouth Bridge widening. The design work is done, and we did bid the project out about a year ago now, and the bid prices came in a little bit higher than we could afford, that we had budget for. So that is one reason we went after this grant, to help us pay for the traffic signal relocation work that's required to widen the bridge. So we have spent about $450,000 of the budget allocated for this project to date.
Okay, so, and what information was included on the RFP? And what did you tell them needed to be done in order to get more money?
You mean on the application for the grant?
No. Well, you said you went out and did an RFP and realized that you didn't have enough money for the project?
Well, so yeah, we did a request for bids, actually. We actually went out and got bids from contractors to construct the widened bridge. We thought we were within our budget there and we'd have enough to build it, and the bids came back a little higher than expected. So the original bridge widening, to widen that bridge, we have to move the traffic signal poles out of the way to get the bridge wider. So we ended up having to buy new traffic signal equipment with the bridge grant money. So what this new grant does is allow us to purchase that traffic signal equipment with this new grant and free up, it was about $440,000 that we were able to free up to use towards the bridge, so we can afford to get the bridge widened and get the traffic signal moved at the same time to complete the project.
So most of that money was because we had additional expenses, not necessarily for the bridge itself.
Right. The traffic signal is somewhat of a separate project there, but in order to widen the bridge, the traffic signal poles, was the way they exist now, are right up against the existing bridge. So to widen the bridge, we need to move those signal poles out of the way. So without this new grant here, we were going to have to use the bridge grant money to do that. But with this new grant for the intersection and traffic signal work, we can use the new grant money for that traffic signal pole relocation. So it doesn't have to come out of our original budget.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then on page 2 of the council communication, where it talks about the two pieces that I didn't have in my packet was under the purpose of this IG amendment is to, and under D, it says replace Exhibit C2 funding provisions in its entirety with Exhibit C3. I found Exhibit C1, but I did not find Exhibit C2 or C3. And then also it says replace Exhibit A, statement of work, in its entirety with Exhibit A1. There may have been something in the packet that was labeled Exhibit A that maybe is Exhibit A1.
So yeah, the new exhibits attached to the agreement are the modified exhibits there. They show the new funding share there between the city and the grant funds. And then Exhibit A talks about the additional work we're going to do with the intersections and the signal poles. So those are the new exhibits.
Okay,
Remember, Russell, which ones did you say were not in your packet?
I did not see Exhibit C2 or Exhibit C3.
Okay. I have C3, but looking for C2. It should be before, but
C2 is the one that it should have been replaced, but so does it say Exhibit C3?
You know, it's an orphaned title. That might be why. It might be on the bottom of another page. So
okay, I do see, all right, I do see Exhibit C3. All right, thank you.
It just got orphaned, I think, and then, yeah.
Right, and so then on A1, I think the very first thing in there, right after the ordinance, well, right after the state of Colorado amendment, it says Exhibit A, statement of work. And then it has 22124, and then it has BRO M385-017, and then NHPP M3095-017. I'm really wondering if that should be Exhibit A1.
I believe you are correct. That should be Exhibit A1. That is a correction that needs to be made to the final document.
Okay, I appreciate that. And so let me make sure. The other question that I've had, so all of this money that has been in the budget, where are we keeping it in the public improvement fund?
That is correct. It's in the project in the public improvement fund. It's all been accumulated in the same project in that fund.
So, but in the budget itself, like in the budget for 2020, under road and bridges, it has around, even from 2015, 194,171, and it's right around 190,000 all the way from 2015. So do we not reflect that in the budget? in general?
I believe on the public improvement fund summary sheet, it shows the additional amount. There was 600,000 in 2020, and then 620,000, I believe, in 2021. That's been added to that project. The road and bridge accounts actually for the street maintenance work, the mill and overlay type of work. So there's actually a Dartmouth Bridge public improvement fund listed there. I'm trying to find the summary spreadsheet if I've got it here to say the exact project number, but it does show the additions that have been added to the original budget over the last couple of years.
Okay, and so maybe it's on page 146 of the 2020 budget is what I'm looking at, and it's probably included in one of those figures. I don't know which one it's included in, but it is not under road and bridge.
Right, it's a separate project. I believe it's called Dartmouth Bridge in the Public Improvement Fund. It's not the Road and Bridge project.
Okay, so I will look, and actually, City Manager, well, Maria Sabata is here. Maria, do you know the answer to my question?
Director Sabata?
Sorry about that. I was trying to get off mute. I don't know it offhand. I would need to look at the materials and get back to you, Councilman Russell.
Okay, that'll be great. I appreciate that. And thank you very much, Mr. Host, for the answer to those questions. That's been very helpful.
Sure.
Any further questions? All right, could I have a motion to approve? Sorry, I moved it over. Council Bill 56, 11A2.
I move to approve Council Bill 56.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Member Stone. Any discussion about this? Member Russell.
One more question on this. When will we get started on this? I know we have 8 years, but are we going to wait 8 years?
Our goal is going to be to try to start next year if we can. We've got to modify the plans to include the intersection work and the traffic signal work, but we're hoping to start work first half of next year is what our plan is. If we can bring everything together, we're definitely not going to wait that long. It'll be much sooner than that.
I greatly appreciate that. And part of the reason for all the questions is this bridge has been problematic since 2015. Councils have been hearing about this. And the one thing that was interesting to me is that in the statement of work in the 2000, I don't remember what it was, 2008 or whenever they did it, it labeled that the state had labeled it a problematic bridge, but that was eliminated. But we really haven't done any work on it to correct that problem, have we?
That is correct. I believe we've done a little pothole repair and patching like that, but we have not addressed the major needs in the report there. And that's what this project will do. And that's why we want to move forward as quickly as we can to get this done so we don't delay it any longer and we can get the bridge up to current standards.
Okay, I greatly appreciate it. I think that's important. Thank you.
Anybody else? I have to say that this bridge has been an item of conversation the entire 11 years I have been on council, and it was and is part of the multitude of bridges that are rated very poorly throughout our state, and is why we need a major infrastructure plan. And the main reason why we've not done anything is because of money, and we have not been able to pull money together to make it happen. And I could not be more happy that we might actually get this started next year. I think it shows that one, our budget is much more able to handle this, and then secondly, we've had some good partnerships. I really appreciate the grant work that you all have done to get these last miles in here. No pun intended on that, but so I'm very excited to see this happen. Any other discussion? Thanks for the work you've done on this. Let's have a vote.
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Cuesta?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra,
Aye.
Member Stone,
Aye.
Member Wink,
Aye.
Mayor Olson.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Amazing. The next is 11A3, Council Bill 57. Staff recommends City Council approve a bill for an ordinance for a joint funding agreement for water resources investigation between the U.S. Department of Interior, U.S. Geological Survey, and the City of Englewood. Director of our South Platte Renew and Utilities, Peter Van Rye, and Deputy Director of Utilities, Stephen Simon, are here to answer questions.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd also like to introduce Deputy Director Blair Corning. He's here as well. He stayed on tonight because he handles this from the South Platte side. So this is one of those rare instances where I come before council with both of my hats on, both utilities and South Platte Renew. And really what this is this is a agreement that we have. It's a joint funding agreement that we have with the USGS, the U.S. Geological Survey, to maintain some stream monitoring systems along along the South Platte. One is right near the Allen plant, where the intake at the Union Ave pump station, and another one is right outside of our South Platte Renew here. And so, what these two stations do is they essentially on the water side, they help us regulate water volume from a water rights perspective. So they help us with the accounting of how much water we're utilizing, and so that we can report that through the appropriate agencies from a water rights usage perspective. On the South Platte side, we use it more for actual environmental monitoring of the South Platte relative to some of the requirements that we have specific to our discharge from South Platte Renew. And so there's a couple different purposes in these two stations, but they're both important. And we enter into this agreement as on behalf of the City of Englewood, on behalf of both South Platte Renew and utilities with the USGS. And so the total amount of it's a 5-year agreement. It has 1-year annual renewals, and so we're at the end of a 5-year term, and now we're going to initiate another 5-year term. And the total amount for the agreement for our portion annually is $40,122. The South Platte Renew component of that is $27,856, and the utilities is $12,266. And the reason there's a disparity in those two numbers is essentially tied to the amount of analysis that's done at each one of those stations. So the South Platte Renew station does a lot more water quality analysis, whereas again the utilities really just does volumetric analyses. And so this was something that was brought before both the Supervisory Committee at South Platte Renew on the 24th of September and recommended for approval, as well as the Water and Sewer Board last week on 11/10, where it was also recommended for approval. And really, it's just it's an opportunity to jointly fund systems that are more regional in nature that both benefit utilities and South Platte Renew with the U.S. Geological Survey. And with that, I will open it up for questions.
Thank you. Council, questions? Member Russell.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question. In the ordinance itself, it gives the city manager the authority to extend further agreements. And so I'm just wondering why that was written into the ordinance, because it is an intergovernmental agreement, and why it wouldn't be something that has to come before the elected body.
I would say that's a good question. I don't necessarily know the rationale behind that, other than my estimation is that's the way we've done it. Oh, Allison, I'm sorry. Allison's on. She might have an answer.
So in an IGA, the city council sets the terms, and one of the terms of most IGAs is that they can be extended by agreement of the parties. And if no terms of the agreement are going to be changed, that can be done administratively. And as a matter of fact, I was just having that very discussion with Arapahoe County on an upcoming IGA as well. So if there's not going to be any change to the terms and everything's going well, it can be administratively extended. If there is to be any change to the terms whatsoever, it would have to come back for a new IGA. So we're going to have one IGA come back in. It's a very minor term change, but if there is any change whatsoever, it comes back. If there's no changes, it is administratively approved. And I think the reason for that is that it's one of those just regular, that's just a standard area of business that council relies on staff to monitor. If everything's going fine, we'll just continue. And that's a pretty common term in a lot of our IGAs.
Does that include if the cost goes up, would it come back to council?
Yes, that would be a change in terms. So it would have to come back to council. The only authority the city manager has to extend it is if no terms are changed.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
I don't see any other questions. So could I have a motion to approve 11A3?
I'll move to approve 11A3.
Thank you, Member Stone, and a second.
I second.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Any further discussion? Seeing none, would the clerk please take roll for the vote?
Yes. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Cuesta?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Stone?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Yeah. All right, 11. Council Bill 57 passes. Our next one is 11C. Actually, that's on first reading. Sorry. It'll be coming back to us. 11C1, resolutions and motions. Staff recommends City Council approve by resolution the 2021 fee and rate schedule incorporating the fee and rate changes adopted by the City Council during the 2021 budget process. And our Director of Finance, Maria Sabata, is here to take questions and give any further information.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I don't have further information to share. I'll just say that this is really the final piece of putting the chair on top of the budget. Per your pleasure, you've asked us in the past to incorporate all of the fees and rates, license and permit fees in one schedule. And so we've shared with you 2 documents. There's one document that shows what changes have been made, but the second document is an all-inclusive document, which is really what this resolution refers to. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Member Russell.
Thank you. The only question I have, and it's Director Van Rye answered that question earlier when we voted on the rate changes. I will be supporting this tonight with the expectation that the outside city rates will be addressed in the first quarter of next year. So that was really the only question I had. Thank you very much.
Okay. Do you want to make a motion?
I will. I move to approve 11C1, the 2021 rate and fee schedule resolution.
Thank you. Could we have a second?
I will second the motion.
Thank you, Member Wink. Any further comments? Seeing none, would the clerk take the roll for vote?
Yes, ma'am. Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Cuesta?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Stone?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Agenda item 12 is our COVID-19 update. And this is Manager Lewis or Mr. Power, I don't know.
I'm coming on now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but you're totally darked out.
Yeah, I see that. Let me try one.
There you go.
Thank you. I'll start out as always with the numbers. Let me open this up. So in Arapahoe County, we've gone from 19,170 cases to 20,495 cases, and that is since last Friday. We also have added in Arapahoe County 3-day average hospitalized persons. That number actually has gone down, which is good news. So we were at 157 last Friday. Now we're at 139. Total deaths have inched up from 411 to 415. And in Inglewood, our total case number has gone from 847 to 933. And our total deaths have remained at 29 persons. I do want to give council some updates with regard to staffing, because we have had at least 2 council members who were contacted by a citizen last week who did not receive the service that he felt he should have. And that was because we had to close an entire department at the city because of a positive COVID case and multiple exposures. Luckily, no one else has tested positive since that exposure. But I did just want to let you know that Arapahoe County is at level orange, safer at home, high risk. And as a result, all offices across the county are required to be at 25% capacity. We have complied with that order, even though there is a government exemption for that. So we have significantly reduced staffing capacity at the Civic Center, Recreation Center, Malley Center, Broken T Golf Course, as well as lesser reductions at the Service Center, Police Building, Allen Treatment Plant, South Platte Renew, and other essential facilities that we have staff at. I did want to let you know we are maintaining 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, customer service personnel at the Hub, which is our the customer service center on the 3rd floor of the Civic Center. And members can reach that at the main number, 303-762-2300. Or as always, actually this is new, we now have a customer service at inglewoodcolorado.gov email address that they can also send, and it will be responded to promptly by our staff at the Hub. And then the Q alert system is still working fine. Permits can be applied for online. Permit counters are currently open for walk-in visits. The difficulty that we had last week was with the finance department. Finance had to shut down because of that potential exposure, and we were not able to take cash payments which affected 4 different customers that came to the building, and one of them did contact a number of council members, and so we apologized to that individual and let him know that there would be no late fees assessed for his inability to pay last week when I believe his bill was due. All of this information has been posted on our website and at entrances to the building, but this raises a larger question that I have talked to at least 2 council members about during one-on-one visits in the past week, and that is there may be times when we are not able to provide 100% of services in all of our buildings as a result of potential exposure or positive cases that are found. And so certainly that raises the question that I would welcome council feedback on, if you have it, to close facilities, particularly the non-essential facilities that I mentioned earlier. Right now, we are not required to do that, and I have chosen not to go that route, but I did just want to let council know that I'm perfectly open to council direction if you think that is something that would be necessary. And glad to answer any questions or hear comments if you have them.
Thank you, Manager Lewis. Any questions or comments for the manager? So in terms of giving comments about closing buildings, I think we gave you the ability to do that. And if you think that I'm concerned about putting our staff in harm's way. And if you have an outbreak in a building that can't, sustain that. I know there have been other cities, I think Littleton just went through this where they had to close the entire building because of exposure, and you do a deep clean and figure something out. But I'm totally supportive of you doing what you need to do to keep our staff and our public who might come in and out free carefully. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, so City Manager Lewis, if I understand correctly, you're asking for our input in terms of just lowering lowering even past the 25%? Or I guess my question would be, what type of impact will we have to services or to just making sure that we have provided staff just the ability to do their jobs working remotely? Obviously, if we see no impacts and they are able to do their jobs satisfactory outside of the office, then I would be in favor of it. But I just wanted to understand from you if you see any impacts.
Yeah, so thanks to council support and the great work of our IT department, we have rolled out over 100 laptops to office workers. And so certainly compared to March, we have much better ability to work remotely, which is why moving to 25%, first to 50%, then to 25% has not been seen a significant drop in services that the public would notice. If we go below 25%, I would really question the wisdom of remaining open, because I think it will be difficult to maintain a level of service for the public. At this point, my rationale has been that we have not had major outbreaks. We did, as of Saturday, have one department that had 2 positive tests within a 10-day period, I believe, which certainly is concerning. That entire department is now working remotely. They are an internal service department and they are able to do their work from home. And we've disinfected the entire work area, done contact tracing, and we think that that is now controlled. And we don't have any other examples like that, even as we've worked at 50 and 100% or near 100%, for the last 6 or 7 months. So we think we've been able to really get incredible cooperation and help from staff in keeping our facilities safe. The staff that I've talked to believe we can do that safely and maintain at least the 25% level. But certainly I just want to make sure that you all know that I work at your pleasure. And if you think that we absolutely should close down buildings, I will do that. At this time, it's not my intention to do that unless we are ordered to do that by either Tri-County or the state. But I just want to make sure that council knows that I will accept that direction if that is the direction you have.
Thank you. Member Russell.
Thank you. And City Manager, I greatly appreciate your working to resolve that issue and to make sure there is somebody from finance there. I know that we do have essential personnel that are on the job. And so those departments, we've been able to keep open essential personnel, right? And I too want staff to be safe, but I also do believe that we need to maintain city services. And it seems to me like we are not, even though case numbers are going up, we have not been impacted like Arapahoe County and from Aurora because of the size of the city. But I greatly appreciate it's a balancing act, but I do believe that we need to maintain the services of the city, and I thank you for that.
Any other input? All right. I think that means stay the course. Take action when you need it. Use your judgment.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Next is general discussion, mayor's choice. You'll see that water and sewer board vacancy discussion is on there. And now we have 3 more on top of that, which so what I wanted to do tonight was just get a sense from you all. I hope you all got that email. I'll open up here. It came from Jackie, right? So just in the last week, we have Ace has a business owner who's moved or is no longer in business in the area. We have an ETech person who has not been involved long enough or it has not been consistent. Planning and zoning person is now moving, and then water and sewer board has somebody else who's moved. So the question is, it seems like there's someone to move up in every single one of them and have the boards filled. But if you all would like to do another round and get alternatives in there, we can do that, or we can wait until the June. So I would like to get some direction so that Mayor Pro Tem and I can plan that in into a tight schedule if you want that. So could I just hear your thoughts on this? Member Anderson?
Are any of these ones we've really struggled getting quorum at? Not that I'm looking at them and none of them jump out at me as ones we've really struggled with. Like library, I know library board's been a problem. Are there any of these that have had that problem?
I think each of you that serve on these will have, I don't think planning and zoning has, but they've always used their alternate. So we'd have one. Any others? I don't know how ACE operates these days. Member Russell, if that's been a problem or not.
It hasn't been a problem, and the person that it has moved out of the city or taken a job in a different city really hasn't been there, and they've been able to operate okay. So I think that they will be fine.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem?
I was going to mention ETech came close to not having quorum for one of their meetings over the past couple months, but other than that, they've had no issues with quorum.
Okay. My druthers would be to wait and do it in June unless we see we have a few meetings that aren't happening, and then we do a quick, month call and then is that, yeah, I see Cheryl. Member Winks a yes on that. I see. Anybody disagree with that? Or you really want to do this again? All right. Well, we'll just move ahead with what we have. I mean, that depends on us approving for the next round, which will come to us on the 7th, right, of December. So if anybody out of that group drops out, then we're definitely going to be a little bit in trouble with some maybe. Okay, great. That's first thing. Just a couple of things on boards and commissions. We had police officers pension board last week and firefighters pension board. Police officers didn't have a quorum. It's not that big of a deal. We just have to meet once a year. I think we'll be fine the next one. Firefighters did have it, and nothing too serious to report on it. It's more of an approving and asking of questions. I did want to say that my street and a few others had the street sweeping thing on their doors, and I had a number of people tell me they really loved this communication. So I don't know how many of you, it's a little different than the last one, and actually it just seems like we just had our streets swept a while ago, but people really appreciated it and felt like the communication was really good. And I talked to the city manager about it. Would be really nice if Spanish was on the other side, English is on one side, and then the other side has the exact same English content on it. But I loved it. So thank you for the positive information. So to Director DeAndre and others. And just a really, I mean, the governor called in several of the South Metro mayors. I think he was making his rounds around the whole metro area and then the rural areas to ask us to be very vigilant in encouraging people to be careful in this time of COVID, particularly related to the holidays. So one thing was his concern that cities do all they can within their own public buildings to be careful, which I think we are doing. But then secondly, do that so that others can remain open. And of course, the concern is the schools. When the schools can't remain open, parents have a really hard time working and staying on the job. So it just was more about messaging. The Arapahoe County has a $250,000 grant on marketing, messaging, that kind of thing. I think you might start to see a few more messages come out around this. But today's the 16th, and if you really can't manage having a Thanksgiving without intergenerational people at your table, then now is the time to isolate for 10 days to make sure no one, gets exposed to anything. But let's encourage people to be careful so that we all can be together in the new year. I think that's it for me. So council members' choice. Anybody want to start, or should I just go through alphabetically? All right, Mayor Pro Tem wants to start out.
I'll just start, and actually, the only item I have for tonight is just ETAG did meet this past Thursday. So they did talk to Public Works about their transportation capitals projects plan, as well as discouraging parking in the bike lanes around the city of Inglewood and the safe to school routes those were 3 items, but actually the one that I found really interesting was the 4th item, which was actually brought up by a citizen in the previous ETAC meeting, but there's been speeding on basically Acoma and Cornell. And basically we have stop signs currently on Cornell. So this is just the area just northwest of the Chick-fil-A. But basically what happened was staff agreed with the citizen that there is speeding there. So they're actually going to reverse the stop signs there. So now the stop signs are going to be on Cornell, or excuse me, on Acoma. So Cornell is going to be able to flow a little bit more freely, which is actually the less busy of the streets. So kudos to the citizen for bringing that forward and for staff and ETAC for looking into it and making the change within a month. So I think that stop sign is going to be changing pretty quickly if it hasn't already. So other than that, I have nothing further for tonight. Thank you, Mayor.
Great, thank you. Anyone want to go next? All right, I'll read down the list. Member Anderson.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one thing. I was out walking today and saw that there was a mural going in on one of the where the, I guess it's Little Dry Creek goes right underneath Santa Fe there by Dartmouth. So that's exciting to see that. Stop and talk to the artist there, Amanda Wolf, and Britt Fuchs was there, as well as Adrian Torres, our parks manager. It was cool to see that going on, and it did make me think of what potential do we have over there, even further west along Santa Fe. I know a lot of along the South Platte. I know a lot of that has been cleaned up now. But I wanted to see if I could put this in as a council request. Just curious what the status of is with our property along the South Platte there. I suppose the east side of the river is ours. It's been cleaned up. Is it possible to treat that as a park? What do we have? How have we designated that land, and what potential uses are there? Could we do a nature walk through that area? Or anything like that. So that's a council request, or if you have something to comment on it right now, that's great too. Okay. And that's all I have.
Member Anderson, can I ask you a question? Did they finish the mural when, or did it look like
no. They were just working on it. Yeah.
They're just beginning.
Yeah.
Do you know when they were planning to finish? Because someone called and asked if I'd come by today, but I just, my day was crazy.
I think they said it was going to take a couple of weeks, maybe a week or two.
Okay, that's what I thought, but they wanted me to come by today, but I thought, I think I'll go later. All right, so go by and watch.
Yep.
Member question.
Thanks, Mayor. I just have one as well, and it relates to our most recent election. Our neighbors to the south there, Littleton, they did put on the ballot, and it's something that we've discussed, I don't know, a few months back now. Citizens directly electing the mayor. It did pass in Littleton with 81% support. It was overwhelming. And essentially where they're going to turn one current council seat into an elected mayor spot. No powers dictated or authorities to the mayor change. Really, it just goes into the hands of the voters. When we had that conversation a few months back, it got tabled, and I think it's something we're going to pick up, the next time we do our list of priorities. And so I'm just hoping that can once again make the list of priorities. I'd like to have the conversation. I thought the will was there among citizens originally. If I see Littleton getting 81%, there's no doubt in my mind that that we would get 50.1 or more. And that was referred by their council. That was not a citizens initiative. So that kind of jumped out at me as well. Outside of that, I guess I would say this too. And I know that there's nothing's been certified yet, but I thought it was a really smooth election. Credit to all our officials in Colorado and really nationwide. I think that there was a lot of concerns going into it of what's the other side going to look like, and everybody woke up and things were, for the most part, the same as they were the night before. So just in terms of public safety and everybody acting civilly. So, I credit to America, and it's a great thing. And I'll tell you, even when I was on pins and needles a little bit the night before, and again, America was just fine the next day. So, so kudos to all the people that worked on the election. Again, Colorado and nationwide, tremendous job. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Member Cuesta, and thanks for reminding us about the Littleton thing. I think it'll go the same way in Englewood, and they also delayed putting that on so that they could get just the right timing. with theirs. So I think it bodes well for Englewood if that's what we all want. Member Russell. Member Russell?
She looks frozen.
Oh.
There we go.
Thank
I just thought maybe you were staring.
No, thank you. I agree with Member Cuesta also about the elected mayor. I still think there's a will out there for the people to do it. So I think that we probably should put it back on the agenda to talk about. Other than that, I have nothing else this evening. Thank you very much.
Great. Member Stone?
Thank you. I do have a couple things. So Parks and Rec met last week. The Romans Park upgrades are coming along really nice. It looks really cool over there. The playground equipment is starting to go in. Some of it's like kind of woodland sort of themed. There's a giant butterfly that looks really cool. I'm really excited about that because that's the park that I generally walk to the most myself. And then the leashed dogs task force committee thing gave us a small report, said that things were going really well there, and we should be hearing from them in council very soon. So really happy about that. One thing, sort of a council request, I think for Manager Lewis regarding driver's licenses. So recently came to my attention that the state has reduced their availability of renewing driver's licenses pretty significantly. And the nearest appointment for a DMV anywhere near us is the second week of December to be able to renew your driver's license if you missed the ability or do not have the ability to renew online. So this has minorly impacted my life and wanted to make sure that other people were aware of it as well. But I think that Manager Lewis might have some information for us regarding mitigation of the impact on citizens for that. Is that right?
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Stone. And I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. I was not aware of that delay. As you know, a number of state offices have been closed. And so I think that they've consolidated into just a handful of locations. I did talk to the city attorney about this today, and her office did provide me with two resolutions, emergency orders that the governor put out that did essentially waive enforcement of expired licenses, giving people extra time to do that. In addition, as a result of my conversation with you, I spoke with Chief Collins, who said that our officers are not giving any tickets for that during the declared emergency. And so I appreciate you making sure that we were aware of that problem. And so I think we as a staff now are, and are taking precautions to make sure that no one is caught in a bind because of it.
Awesome. Thank you, Manager Lewis. Thank you, Mayor.
Great. Member Wink.
I have no report this evening.
Thank you. And I was wrong in telling you that we were approving boarding commissions next time. It's actually January, so it will be a little bit later than, oh, wait, when was that? What does the city clerk's office say about when is it? I think it's.
I believe it's set to come forward the first meeting in January.
January 4th. Okay, great. Thank you. Just didn't want you to be surprised when it didn't come on the next one. All right, Manager Lewis, City Manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. I do have a few things this evening. First of all, I just want to start out by reminding you that we did send all of you a briefing memo on the DDA election, but wanted to let you know that we've received, between us and the Chamber of Commerce, have received a number of questions from electors within the district about what the somewhat confusing vote, split vote, if you will, meant and what it means for the DDA, what it means for City Council. And so I did want to let you know that Community Development is preparing information to disseminate disseminate to the electors because we've received so many questions about this. But I also don't want staff to get really too far ahead of council on this. This is now completely in the purview of city council. And so I wanted to just make sure it would be fine for the mayor and the mayor pro tem to discuss this week during mayor manager meeting about having a conversation coming up about this, if council would like for this to be put on an upcoming agenda, and to make sure that the information that we're providing electors and people in the DDA is consistent with what city council wants to do. Secondly, I wanted to give you an update on the finance director search. I'm happy to report that a week before the due date, which I think was last Friday, we had over 90 applications, so we're really excited about those. Our headhunting firm is finalizing a list of those folks to test and then to interview. And so we hope to hold those interviews and make an appointment in December for hopefully first of the year or shortly thereafter start date for the new finance director. Director Maria Sabata has been great to offer to stay, certainly through the middle of December, even possibly through the end of December. We don't want to abuse her time and exit to her home state of Ohio, but appreciate her service. And then last on that topic is the fact that we have let staff know that Assistant to the City Manager, Tim Dodd, will be serving as the interim finance director in that gap, which we don't expect to be too long, but we have met with the finance department staff. Many of them are very taxed. That is a very lean department in terms of staffing. And so felt like it was a good fit, particularly with Tim's background in finance and budgeting, in both for the state of Massachusetts, city of Santa Monica, city of Baltimore, to really step into that role in addition to his current duties. And last but not least, we do have sustainability on your agenda for next week. As you know, council put some good goals around sustainability in the strategic plan, but we've never really resourced those goals. And this was something that in the strategic plan that as a leadership team at the staff level, we feel we're a little lacking on some direction. So we're bringing that to you for next week. And I just wanted to give you a heads up to be thinking about, in particular, a definition of what sustainability means to you. Tim, the assistant to the city manager, will be leading that discussion and asking you that question. So I just wanted to give you ample time as a heads up for that. And Mayor, I don't believe I have anything else.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for Manager Lewis on what he presented? All right. Agenda item 15, City Attorney's Report. Madam Attorney?
No report this evening, Mayor.
All right. Thank you. Let's take a vote to adjourn. All in favor? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine. Member Anderson?
Yeah.
Aye.
Member Cuesta?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Sierra?
Aye.
Member Stone?
Aye.
Member Wink?
Aye.
Mayor Olson?
Aye. Great. Thank you.
Have a nice.
See you all on November 23rd. Be healthy and
See
well.
y'all.
Enjoy the warm weather.
Good night, everyone.